Happy holidays, campers! In today's all-camp event for the 2024 Holiday Special Badge, we will be covering 2006's Black Christmas, Christmas Chronicles 2, Meet Me in St. Louis, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and Nativity. Joining me is a troupe of elven camp counselors. Additionally, as a reminder for the occupants of Cabin 13, please stop setting up Home Alone style traps around your cabin. They are deadly. And as always, it's going to be a great holiday at Camp Film Camp. Hello, campers! Welcome to the 2024 holiday special of Camp Film Camp. Today, we are going to be joined by 4 camp counselors, and I'm going to introduce you to them right now. Starting off, it's my co-host on Framerec on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. You've seen him on this channel before because he was here last month talking about the sports movies, and he's been on all of our Cinema Soapbox episodes. He's one of the panel members there. So without further ado, Dylan Randazzo. Hey, Dylan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here. I like the idea of an expanded panel. It makes for probably a range of interesting new discussion threads and everything. Mm-hmm. But coming off the sports one, jumping into Christmas movies, I mean, it's been a camp-filled autumn/winter, so I'm just very thrilled. And to see that so much great response has been coming to you in this channel and the show, it's just great to see our camp slowly building and building new cabins by the month. So very honored to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'm very happy to have you, and I did not prep you for this, but what's your favorite Christmas movie?
It's Elf. I mean, yeah, it's Elf. I would say Die Hard on a given day, too, but I don't want to open that can of worms, so I will say Elf.
If you'd like to open that can of worms, go check out the videos at Cinema Soapbox on Is Die Hard a Movie? There or a movie?
Is Die Hard a movie?
Is it a Christmas movie? There are two episodes. One where one of our guests talks about if it is, and the other one says if it isn't. The person who says if it is also from the Dill Pickle Movie Network. You have seen them on this channel on Cinema Soapbox, and he argued that it is a Christmas movie from Picture This on Dill Pickle Movie Network and Cinema Chad. It's Chad Webb. Hey, Chad. How are you? Oh, you're...
Whoa. No,
there you are. Hey. How are you doing today, Chad?
I'm doing great. It ended up being like pretty cold to do camp over here in December, but I got a fireplace going on. I'm pretty I'm pretty cozy right now, actually. Happy to be talking some Christmas movies.
Campers love a fire. Hey, what is your favorite Christmas movie?
Well, I also kind of I'm trying to figure that out all the time, but I have a running few. I got like Home Alone, Elf as well, but ultimately I went with Die Hard because it went with the spirit of what I've argued on this channel before. So
nice.
There's a few.
Our next guest, you have not seen on this channel yet, but you will very much in the future because I have plenty of things lined up for her. And that is, you may have seen her on Draft Day or on our show Framerec on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. It is Stacy. Hello, Stacy.
Hello. Hi.
How are you today?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Stacy will be on our next episode of Framerec. She was on our last episode of Framerec where we talked about Thanksgiving, and she will be on our December episode where we are talking about Santa Jaws. So tune in for that. We have not filmed it yet, so I don't know what it's like, but I'm sure it's going to be good. But Stacy, what's your favorite Christmas movie?
Well, it is Elf, but I feel like that's such a cheap answer now. So for nostalgia, I'll go White Christmas because that's my favorite that I share with my mom.
Nice. Awesome. That's really great.
But it really
is. Finally, a no good brigand. I can't believe we're having him on this channel. No, I'm just kidding. It's one of our very good friends. You haven't seen him on this channel, and hopefully you will a bunch in the future. You've seen him on Draft Day on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. It is Corey. Hey, Corey, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I left my elven camp counselor outfit at home, unlike you guys, but I was just out building a new little fort on the cabin grounds. Fort Kickass. Fort Kickass will rise.
That's very true. Of if we were camping, you would definitely be the one who's like, guys, I just built a thing over here.
I just built my own fort over here. I engineered the whole thing. It's got hangers and joists, like cabins do.
Not gonna lie, I wouldn't even bother with my own fort. I'd just stay in Corey's.
Nice.
They build me a room.
Corey, what's your favorite Christmas movie?
My favorite Christmas movie is kind of like a triangle of three. Depends on the mood. It's a combination of Elf, Die Hard, and The Christmas Vacation.
All right, all three have been represented here now. Of those,
I also like Die Hard as a Christmas movie, even though I didn't say it. I feel like left out now because everyone else said Die Hard.
Matty Claus, what's your favorite Christmas movie?
The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yes.
I also love Die Hard and Elf and all of those. I love Christmas movies in general.
R.I.P.
Because
Muppet
Christmas
Vision.
movies, Christmas movies by their very nature are campy in general. Most are just campy in general. Whether it's the kind that you're seeing in these movies here, or just the schmaltzy, the over the top, the very theatrical. Christmas movies are campy by nature, so I generally enjoy them very much. But we've got a whole slate of campy movies to talk about here today. We did this a little different because I wanted to have a full panel on today, and instead of me picking all of the movies, I let each person pick a movie. So as we went through, with each person picked a movie, we all watched them, and now we're going to go through them here. The person who picked it is going to be able to discuss it first during our first round. If you're new to this show, if you've never watched it before, we're going to go through a discussion phase. We're going to discuss all 5 movies. Then we're going to rank them. The top 2 from our combined ranking, we're going to go into deep dives on those. We're going to score those based on camp, acting, writing, and overall quality. The one that comes out, emerges at the top, is going to get the camp trophy. And then all of you, everybody watching it, everybody on this panel, is going to earn that 2024 holiday special badge. So without further ado, let's talk about our first movie. Black Christmas.
There.
And I am the one who picked this. So I'm going to go ahead and start the show here. You have a little banner. All right. So I picked Black Christmas. Here's the thing with this. I really enjoy the original because this is a remake. There's been 3 Black Christmas movies. There's the original one in 1974, I believe it was. There's the 2006 one, and there's one in 2019. I have never seen the 2019 one because guess what? I watched the 2006 one and I was fine. Like I was like, they've perfected this movie and it's fine. I do love the original. I think it's great. I think it's important because it's one of the first slashers. At least the first slasher that kind of created the slasher, the trope, like the tropes of slashers. There were slashers before this, but this one created like the stalking a bunch of girls and there being a final girl, that kind of thing. That this one kind of created that. It's often credited as being the first like stereotypical slasher. This is the remake, and it is directed by, or written and directed by, oh my God, his last name's Morgan. I've forgotten it. Anyway, I will get it in just Glenn Morgan. It's Glenn Morgan.
Yeah.
Glenn Morgan was a writer on X-Files. His brother, Darren Morgan, has written all of the best X-Files episodes. If you've ever seen Clive Buckman's Final Repose, or Jose Chung's From Outer Space, those are Darren Morgan. Glenn Morgan has also written one of the greatest episodes of X-Files, which is Home, which is one that is often banned in countries and even in America for a while. But it's a really great episode. But anyway, he is the one who wrote and directed this movie. When I saw this movie for the first time, I was like, oh my God, I understand. Okay, because this movie was not well received. Critics hated it. Audiences didn't like it. I just think they didn't like. I think they were expecting something else because this movie if you watch it from the perspective of from a camp perspective, it's just so over the top. Everything about it is just up a degree. It's turned up to 11, and it makes me laugh, and I enjoy it very, very much. But I'm going to let other people talk about it because I think everybody here, this is their first time watching it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I've seen it several times, but I'm interested to hear from people who hadn't watched it before. Is there anybody in particular who has Dylan, let's hear it.
Well, I'm coming from it from a really interesting perspective because I hadn't seen the first one. So, like, I'm sure a lot of the panelists here, I don't know how many had not seen the first one or not, but I assume many of you, if not all of you, had seen the first one. So, like, I was someone who went into this totally blind, but I also said, you know what? I'm going to watch the first one just so I can at least understand what they were adapting it from, because I feel like most people who saw this remake saw the first one first to kind of understand the context. I think context is important. And yeah, I think a lot of people who are expecting the first one, a shot for shot remake or whatever, are going to be disappointed. But I'm always of the mind of I never want a shot for shot remake. Because especially if you're remaking something perfect like the first one, I think it's a perfect movie. I think it's fantastic. I thought it's perfectly paced, very dreadful. I think that's the thing, is it's very dreadful. It's seeping with dread and just despair. And I think this one kind of makes it more fun in a way, like in a way that plays also with the holiday iconography better and more plentifully. There's a lot of great cinematography. I mean, Robert McLaughlin, I believe the same writer of the film wrote the Final Destination movies, and the cinematographer from the Final Destination movies, Robert McLaughlin, did this one as well. Robert McLaughlin, his cinematography here is just so freaking good. Like, just the scenes where, I think of that final shot where the guy's like impaled by the Christmas tree or whatever, and it's blinking different colored lights and you see a shadow against the ceiling. Like, it just really feels very dynamic. It feels like this is a movie you could have made very cheaply and made look kind of cheap and, half-assed. But I think they really do a good job being mindful of making it feel artful, but different in a way that the original was. The original is very artful in a different sense. It's got a different pacing, different tone. And I think they understood that. They wanted to honor the first one. You got all those great POV shots that you see in like Michael Myers as well. That kind of invented the book there. But they pay the homage, but they don't feel the need to retread it from a stylistic point of view, which I really appreciate. It still honors the legacy while taking it in a whole different direction. It's why I like the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. It's why I like, John Carpenter's The Thing. It's like, you take these stories that are basically the same, but you add a little more to it. Do I think the backstory is necessary? Not necessarily. I didn't think so for Rob Zombie's Halloween either, but I do think it at least tries to do something different with it, which I appreciate. And I just think it's just seeping with camp and just the overall holiday iconography, which I really appreciated. So yeah, this was a great first watch. I'm very glad you made me watch it, and made me watch the first one by happenstance as well, because I think that is now one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and this is one of my favorite all-time horror remakes. So yeah, I
nice.
think both of them work super successfully, and I want to watch the third because I think there is still more you can do with this. I do think it sets a good groundwork and template.
Nice. We'll move on to someone else in just a second. I just want to address is the backstory necessary? It is for what they have, like
for this version,
changes that they set up, that, and the backstory. And that's the thing I wanted to point out. If somehow someone came back and was like, I didn't see any camp, I'm going to say, look at every scene of those flashbacks. Yeah. Every goddamn scene of those flashbacks is dripping with camp. It's all over the top and silly and yeah. But Chad, did I see your hand? Did I see you wanting to?
I mean, not necessarily, but I can.
Oh, do it.
Yeah. Well, sorry for any of the background noise. I hope it's not totally coming through. But yeah. The original. Baby's having me laugh now. The original Black Christmas hasn't ever really been like one of my favorites, but like you've stated, it is one of those movies that's kind of like foundational, and it has like so many like themes of like abortion and stuff like that, and like setting the groundwork for things to come, even Halloween that would come after that. That gets a lot of the credit. Black Christmas kind of started a lot of that too. I don't think we have Halloween if we didn't get that original movie. And then you have this movie, and I feel like I didn't seek this out because of the fact that so many people say this isn't good. And I'm also glad that you had me watch this one because, thinking about it, like for the episode and actually sitting down to watch it to figure out campiness versus writing and all that stuff. I don't think it elevates. Like I think it's definitely a downgrade for like writing and acting and just themes and all that stuff. But from a camp perspective and from like a just a fun movie perspective, and also scary, a different type of scary than the original movie is, where it's just like it's more jump scare, but I feel like a lot of that is just very well done because it got me multiple times, and then when it starts to go onto showing like what happened to this guy, in adjacent to figure out like what that mystery is. I thought that was also well done, to where it kind of like you talk about like dread in the first movie. I think with this one too, you kind of like you're just so ingrained in trying to figure out what's happening or what happened and who's doing this. And whereas the first movie, spoiler, I don't think you ever really find out who did it. But in this, you totally do, and I like that. And then so it's very different in a lot of ways. My favorite part of this movie, though, adjacent to the original, is that I feel like this one does the Christmas theme a lot better because you get like so many like lights and just Christmas stuff just around, and I just feel like it's used really, really well. Like I think one of you said that. One of the deaths is even Christmas related, so I think that's really fun. So maybe not one of my favorite horror movies, but I do for like a campy, fun Christmas movie. And like you stated at the top too, that like Christmas movies are kind of about camp and kind of about like just being silly and just being silly and just kind of I don't know, what do you call it? Like cute and stuff like that, and cuddly. So even though this wasn't, because it's very brutal, it's a very brutal movie.
Well, one thing you mentioned, like how it kind of leans into the Christmas thing. Both of them have using Christmas as a backdrop. It actually works as an incredible element for them not questioning why people aren't around, because everybody's about to leave. Like everybody's about to leave on. It's the same thing with it's the Die Hard thing. Like if it was any other time, they would be like, why haven't we seen this person in a while? But now it's like, oh, they probably just left, like because it's Christmas. So that's that. What we got, Corey or Stacy?
Yeah,
Corey, let's hear it.
I got it. I really like the production design and the lighting, kind of to go on what Dylan was talking about. I think the construction of the house is super important. There's a lot of very famous houses. You almost have this like kind of like Clue aspect to it, where it's like there are different parts of the house, and so it's a very self-contained movie outside of some of these later scenes in the film. I thought the lighting especially goes to 11. It's like over the top Christmassy. Like there is no way a sorority house of girls is going to decorate this much, even with that like house mom character. But then, I'm not the biggest horror fan. I didn't even I knew it was a remake. I did not watch the original. So I wasn't coming into with that context. I was coming in, this is supposed to be campy slasher. I grew up on like Saw movies, so like slashers in retrospect, when you started with like the Saw films in like high school and college, you're just like, I've already seen like almost as bad as it can get, and so like slasher is this part of horror that I haven't really watched. I've watched more like modern horror, so just coming in with a limited knowledge of slasher films, it felt very tropey. And I think whoever said before, everything's like kind of like dialed up to an 11, and like every little aspect, the lighting, the Christmassy, the backstory. It's just kind of like the perfect mixture of a remake of something and kind of like bringing it up to date and a bit more modern. I also think this cast is this kind of very eclectic mix of 2000s girls that I was just like, the girl from Green Arrow's in this? What is going on? Isn't one of the actresses from Buffy? I'm not a big Buffy fan. Yeah. You got what's her name? Ewan McGregor's wife.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead, yeah, she's showing up in there. So it's a lot of these girls who haven't been like these huge movie stars. You got Gretchen Wieners in there. Come on,
Lacey
come on now.
Yeah.
Iconic role. She didn't really do much outside of Mean Girls that much. So it's not like a very common actress to see. And just like this mix, Michelle Trachtenberg, you know, a lot of these girls, and then just with the most ridiculous backstory. So I loved it. Like from a camp perspective, it's super Christmassy. So like I'm all for this movie. Not something I necessarily expected, you know, because it like I see horror slasher mid 2000s, you know, I'm just like, okay, let's go for it. But you know, I thought it was really enjoyable. A lot of good practical effects. Lots of skull stabbing and things. Not the most realistic, I don't think. That have really good aim over those bags, but wonderful little horror film.
Lots of eye chewing, also.
Yes. What's with the eyes?
My oldest dog doesn't like Black Christmas, and so she was saying nice things about it. So
show him White Christmas, or show her White Christmas.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a terrible joke.
That was good.
I'll be honest. When this was marketed, I was 8 years old. It was 2006, and every time I drove past the movie theater, that was back when they like would show all the names on like the marquee or whatever. I always assumed it was like a Madea movie. I thought it was like a comedy, like Tyler Perry, like Black Christmas. Like, it's a But I didn't expect it to be like a full blown like horror movie either. So it's cool to now kind of retroactively autocorrect that now. But
that's. It's really funny. You talk about the cast. Yeah, that cast is amazing because it's exactly and this is the thing. We'll talk about this if it becomes our deep dive and we talk about acting. But I'll talk about it now. Is that cast is the exact perfect cast. As someone who's been in love with Lacey Chabert for ever.
Party of Five.
It's yes, exactly. Well, and I was going to mention that, like, we've got a Party of Fiver, we've got someone from Arrow, we've got someone from Buffy, we've got all of the hits. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, the people who have seen the original, Andrea Martin, who plays the house mom, played Barb in the original, which is pretty cool.
And she won a Tony Award for playing the grandmother in Pippin on the Pippin revival. Just want to shout that out because it's my favorite musical I've ever seen on Broadway, and she is iconic.
Nice. So Stacy, let's hear about you from this movie.
I mean, I don't know that there's much more to say. I thought I could maybe talk about the cast, but then that got taken too. So I didn't expect the incest. I don't know if that's a spoiler or all of the eyeball eating, which I thought both brought a lot of camp to it, because what's more over the top than incest and eating eyeballs? Exactly. But yeah, no, I mean, we've already talked a lot about it, and you guys have all like kind of said everything technical. So
right,
it's fun, and yes, it's such a 2006 cast. It's perfect.
Talk about the vibes.
The vibes. I don't really have anything to say about the vibes. Why don't you talk about the vibes and leave me the cast?
Sorry, I could have done that. My bad. Apparently, you were the designated one to talk about the cast.
I'm teasing.
Hey, listen, it's not Christmas if mom and dad aren't fighting. So,
we'll go reverse order on the next one. So
no, it's fine. It's fine. I just don't want to make it. Now I'm making it last forever by saying how I don't want to make it last forever. So let's just move on.
The eyeball eating. I love that. I love the more than the eyeball. Eyeball eating is gross, and I don't necessarily want to see that. But the thing that it wrought, which was that shot of the girl falling back in front of the fire and her eyes not being there, so good. Oh, it's such a good moment. Anyway,
yeah, this is legitimately one of the best shot movies, like horror.
Yeah,
movies
all of the reveal shots are like incredibly well done and constructed. Shout out makeup department on all of that and any kind of prosthetics. You know, this is very well executed.
I agree. here's the thing. I can understand why it wasn't super well received, especially if you weren't like getting the whole like what the vibe was going for. I understand all that. I don't understand why it got like why it felt so universally disliked, considering how the craft is really good. Like everything's done really well.
And the Final Destination movies were pretty well received, right? Like I haven't seen many of them, but they were so I don't understand.
Yeah, those are incredible.
Darren. I mean, not Darren. Glenn Morgan. Glenn Morgan wrote the first
and third one.
movie.
Yeah,
the first and third.
Yeah, so I don't know why people.
There was a franchise tied to it, so it's like they clearly liked this guy's writing and the direction and cinematography. You know,
I wonder if they called it a Final Destination Christmas, if it would have sold better. Like I think maybe putting the name Black Christmas on it made it worse.
Movie.
Yeah,
You would have had to have Final Destination shit in it.
Right, but I mean, just from a selling point, maybe people just because the name Black Christmas, they were like, "Oh, you can't touch perfect."
I do think that it was like the perfect death at the end. There's not a
just the most over the top.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
so good. Yeah, so good. That was very. I also love. We didn't talk about it. That opening scene that kind of then trickles out into the movie a little bit where Billy is in the institution. And like Santa's coming in, and it's very grim, dark, and the guy is telling the story in such a stereotypical way. Oh, it's so perfect.
It's
and beautiful.
It's oozing with cheese right from the beginning. It really is. So good. It is a nice cheesy sandwich.
All right. Well, speaking of cheesy sandwiches, I don't know what that means. I don't do transitions like Bill does. Speaking of cheesy sandwiches. Let's talk about Christmas Chronicles 2. I don't know what that means. But Chad, this was yours, and I am very interested in hearing from you on this if you're ready to go.
Yeah, I can talk. I'm just trying to get the baby settled. But
listen, the sound of children's laughter is part of Christmas.
That's a good point. Right now it's more whining, but
that's part of Christmas too.
That's also part of Christmas.
Yeah,
let's find out.
Good point.
Probably a bigger part of Christmas.
Oh, that's sad. But because you said camp. You said you wanted the movies to be kind of campy. So when I thought about it, there were a few that were rattling around. Of course, we were talking about maybe I should pick Jingle All the Way, or I'm sure there's others that I could throw around that are just like so campy that just make it really fun. But then I was like, you know what? I think Christmas Chronicles 1 and 2 both get like really bad raps, and I feel like the thing about them though is that they're both like perfectly campy. It's like if you want something that's going to make you feel cozy, but then also just very silly, very funny, I feel like you can't really get much better than these two on that level. If you're looking at like writing and acting and all of that stuff, I'm not sure if these are going to be the best. So we'll have to see like how those score on on that level. But as far as just being really fun, I really love these. I love that you follow the two kids who are just sad about their dad passing away, and then they basically have to come together with the help of Santa, who's trying to convince people that he's Santa, which I think is really funny. You get some great scenes, like the scene in the prison that just turns into a big like musical number, which is all campy as hell. And it's just Kurt Russell being like maybe the best Santa that's ever been like on screen, just because he's so fun and just hilarious and just still Kurt Russell. And I just, and then when you get to the sequel and you have him bring in Goldie Hawn as Mrs. Claus, I think that's incredible. That's an incredible choice because they have such great chemistry together, of course. And seeing them kind of like flesh out this new world of the North Pole that we haven't seen before. We haven't really seen, I feel like, that kind of level of, North Pole, or at least it's a different take. But I also love the idea of taking a rogue elf and basically making him the villain of the piece, because I think it just really makes it really, really fun. You kind of capitalize off of, I forget the name of the kid who's like hunt for the wilder people and stuff
Julian
like that. And
Dennison.
Deadpool
Julian
2.
Dennison. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, you know, he was very popular for a time, and you kind of capitalize off of that then. And yeah, I think these movies. I love the spirit of the main character, the little girl. I love her going and you know, finding seeing her dad when he's young and kind of connecting there, and that's how she learns the message of, it's not always about the stuff, the, you know, even the lights and the hats and stuff like that. It's about who you're with. And so I love that message of the movie as well. Yeah, ultimately, I just think they're really fun. I love the lore. I love how they do the elves. I mean, it's very CGI and silly, but you know, that adds to the campiness for me. So these are two that I really love watching. I think the first might be better than the second. I watched them both again, and before I had preferred the second one just because it goes a little more over the top, I feel like. But then I watched the first one again, and then the second, and then I was like, oh, I think the first one might be like more solid of like a film. But I love how extra and crazy the second one goes. So yeah, I hope you guys like these because I just thought they were just really, really fun. So
I'll start here real quick. The first of all, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. It's for me, it's just a delight. I'm a big fan of both of them. So them being in there together is
They
great.
should get married.
Well,
That's a very inside baseball joke, Dylan.
Thank you.
I think most people know they're married.
but the thing is, they're not married.
They're not married. They're just dating.
Oh,
Yeah.
for like
Oh wait,
30
really?
years.
Oh, so
Yeah.
that was unintentional. I was just saying.
I thought you
it
were
was a
being
joke.
super clever there, Dylan.
No, it was totally a joke because I thought they were married. So now that makes it. They should get married, but like
I thought
honestly,
they were
they
married
should-
too, Dale, so don't feel
Yeah.
bad.
Okay. Well, then my joke makes no sense.
They're not married.
Okay.
But them being in it and Oliver Hudson, their son, being playing the dead dad, is great. Whether these movies, people like these movies or not, we need a third one so that Wyatt and Kate can get in on the action. We can make a full family affair.
yeah.
Kate Hudson and Wyatt Russell, if you know. That's the thing. Okay, so the first movie, I really liked the first time, and I know that it was kind of divisive at the time, but I think the general idea or the general thing was most people really liked the first one when it came out. At least people would discover and they'd be like, "Oh wow, this is actually pretty good." And the reason is because it came out of nowhere, and we're like, "Kurt Russell is Santa? Yes, please give that to me." And we watched it, and it was good. I often say, "Well, I like those movies because my mom passed away, and there's a lot of things that work for me." The first movie I realized the other day came out before my mom passed away, so I just like it on its own, I guess, which is awesome, which means something. But that jailhouse scene where Steven Van Zandt, that's his name, right? Yeah, and is playing the blues for Santa, and Santa's does that blues number. This is why originally I was like, man, I wish he had picked the first one because that is an ultimate camp scene. Like that's the campiest thing in the whole thing. I love that scene so much. It's very, very, very good. And then the second one, I enjoyed. I liked it. My issue is I like him. I also just forgot his name as you said it.
Julian Dennison.
Julian Dennison.
Yeah, Julian Dennison. Thank you. I like him. I would prefer to be someone like Wyatt Russell, someone who's a little bit better of an actor rather than comedy actor. Like it would have made me feel a little bit more about that character. But I do enjoy both of these movies very much. Again, the first one a bit more. But a little side note here, a little tangent. I was running a D&D campaign, Pathfinder campaign, set in the North Pole at the time when the second movie came out. And we hadn't gotten to the end yet, to the big reveal that Belschnickel was the bad guy. And then this movie came out. And I was like, and so the next session I was like, guys, or when we got to that, I was like, listen, I had this written months ago. this was not because of this movie. The Yule Cat was also a one of the villains in my game, and Belschnickel is they were aligned there and they're aligned in my game. I was like, I had already planned all of this out before this movie came out. Don't pay attention. I'm not copying. Anyway, so that's all I have to say about that. I would like to hear from some others because Chet.
I just want to quickly add something. After I watched these again, I kind of wanted to substitute the first one for the second, but we had already picked the second one, so that it is how it is.
You did ask, and you asked the day after the announcement came out. Like, I was like, if you had asked before now, yes, we could have.
That's when I had watched it, I think. I had just got done watching the second one, then I was like, oh, I prefer the first one. So I agree with you is what I'm saying. But yeah, when you were talking about Steven Van Zandt, he has like one of my favorite parts, not just the whole thing that you talk about, but my favorite line is right after like the Santa Claus is about to leave. They all have the instruments, and he's like, "Hey, can we keep these, Santa?" Just like I feel like because we were watching it, and we were like, "This is the guy from The Sopranos, right?" And it's like The Sopranos is some of the best acting, and then we were like, "Wait a second, he's not very good in this movie." And then it kind of hit me, and I was like, I think this is on purpose, where they're all kind of just being campy, like acting, like where they're not trying to actually act. You know what I mean?
Well, that was what worked so well about Silvio, is that he really wasn't the best actor, but it worked for Silvio. Like it was almost like they crafted the character around him. Like, I've always stood by that. I don't think he's the best actor, but he works so well for that part. But no, I agree with you. Yeah.
It's a very camp performance in that role, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stacy, let's hear from you before we hear from these boys.
I definitely think the first one is better. I like it a lot. I think it's fun. It's a fun family movie. I don't really like the second one, and I don't want to be negative because this is Christmas.
Don't worry, Stacy.
And
you'll be a lot more positive than I will.
I have a really hard time getting through it. Like, it does not hold my attention. Like, I keep trying, I keep rewinding. I've watched it twice. I watched it when it came out, so I've watched it more than twice, but I watched it twice this week. And I don't know if some of the like plot things I have qualms with are answered and I just am missing it or not, but I don't actually care that much anyway, because I don't really like it. And I really hate the elves. And I'm not going to say anything else. I did love the reveal of Goldie Hawn as the wife, because I thought they were married at the end of the first one. So I was happy to see her come back and be Mrs. Claus.
Me too. And I really, as I mentioned before, I really love Goldie Hawn. And a lot of it has to do with just growing up watching a bunch of Goldie Hawn movies. Overboard was my dad's favorite movie.
My mom's favorite movie.
And so like growing up watching them together really made me enjoy that dynamic a lot. I actually like the stuff that takes place at the North Pole a lot. It's one of my favorite depictions of how the North Pole runs. It's just, I wish it were better executed in terms of like the whole movie, like the like we'd spent maybe more time there, and and even like the whole like him eating the cookie and it not really being a thing. It's such a great thing for like, it's such
very
such
trophy
classic,
campy,
very trophy classic campy thing. Like,
I don't even really know what you're talking about.
when she sends the boy to go get the flour to fix the reindeer.
Blue flower, blue
she
flower, red thorns. She sends him on the quest that Donkey gets sent on.
Yes, but Donkey doesn't get a cookie, and he does. And he tells him, if you eat that, it'll give you courage. And then he eats it and he does it, but the courage was in him all along. It's very classic and very good and very in keeping with that character, which I really like. That stuff was so good. I just wish more of the movie was that. If it had been more set there, it would have been great.
But there's elf catnip. Elfsbane or whatever. I don't know. I like the elf catnip. That's what I think of it in my head, is elf catnip.
Okay, well then let's hear from Corey. Corey,
Yeah, there's a lot I kind of do like about it. I think there's a lot of really good parts, and I think to Matt's point, I think a lot of it just doesn't come quite together. I think kind of both of them to a bit. So I would say, the young actress in the first one is kind of really bad, and she's so much better in the second one, which is kind of awesome to see as like someone watching an actor grow. Um, but I think they replaced her with the soon to be stepbrother, I guess, and then shout out Tyrese. Where did Tyrese come from? Like, if I was expecting the new boyfriend to show up, the last person I am thinking of is Tyrese, but shout out to my guy. Having him act with that little kid was the most awkward 30 seconds of my life, I think. And I was watching this on a plane. It was not the best, but we love it because of it. And then that kid, like very tropey, like bubble boy kid. So I just think that acting wasn't the best, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's very hard to act when you are a child, right? To know what's gonna come. I thought the kid was very annoyingly bubble boy, right? So like written well. I like the concept, and to like Matt's point, right? It's got a lot of like great, very tropey Christmas camp. The production super cool, except for the elves. The first elf came up and I like closed my iPad on the plane. I was like, get this away from me. And then I think it was just the first one, but the rest of the elves. And then in the second one, you got Julian Dennison as an elf. I'm like, this is the most uncanny valley. I haven't seen the new Zemeckis Pinocchio, but I have to imagine it's on that kind of level, zany, uncanny valley. But like that, to that point, like that kind of like not great CGI is very campy. So like in terms of camp, I don't know how much is always intentional or unintentional, right? There's intentional camp, and then there's things that, like I don't know, like I have to imagine Tyrese was just like, Fast and Furious is coming out. People like Tyrese, go get him. So I have to imagine like there's some interesting backstory. I think Kurt Russell is great as Santa Claus. Everyone talked about the big scene in the first movie. Moody Teenage Boy did a very good Moody Teenage Boy for the first one, and then was written out of the second one. Shout out.
I wish he had been more in the second one. Like, I feel like that dynamic was part of the charm of the first one.
I think that was important, but they just kind of pawned that off to her and the stepbrother. They kind of like switched roles.
It's a classic breakup trope of like you spend the whole movie getting a couple together, and in the second movie they broken up between the first and second movie. That's how I felt about the siblings. It's like you spent the whole first movie building that relationship, and now it's like, oh yeah, he's not TBD, he's to be seen, TBS.
The last thing I'll say, I do too love the North Pole of it all. I also love how they kind of like have to scientifically explain everything, where they're like, oh, here's the Aurora Borealis, and it's like the most nerdy, it's probably the most like technical, this is how Santa actually operates with magic and science and stuff. But it was very cool to see that depicted, because I don't think that necessarily gets depicted too frequently, so I really like that. It kind of gives it almost feels, and especially the second one, right, feels kind of a little Back to the Future-y, right? There's the time travel there. That whole thing was very tropey. I saw it coming the second like they showed this guy, and it still got me to choke up a little bit, because it's just like this very sentimental thing, and it comes off as unintentional. So that kind of helps it. It's very soapy, it feels like, but also, the depiction of the North Pole itself, and then them essentially saying Santa is Satan, by the amount of like horrible workers. He has like millions of elves. He is Jeff Bezos on the North Pole. Really, that's really what he is. And they don't get paid anything, except for in like snow cannons, which also snow cannons.
And then they gaslight the one who was brave enough to leave into coming back.
The snow cannons are great because they're like, we need a way to distribute the elf catnip, the elf nip, right? And then they're like, what if we just had cannons all over the city and we said it was for the snow? and then they have to come up with this weird scientific explanation about the aurora borealis. So like it's very contrived, and Kurt Russell's great. I think just it doesn't come all together for me, but like parts of it. Christopher Columbus, mad lad, just absolutely loves Christmas, wants to be John Hughes so bad, or Shane Black. I guess they're all want to be John Hughes, but they're not. But yeah, enjoyable film. I'll kick it over to Dylan.
Real quick before we go to Dylan, I just want to mention how Stacy's tree, at a glance, I keep looking at it and it looks like it's part of the tree in the background, which is pretty cool. Anyways,
speaking of the background, I would love if we could move Stacy and Corey over just a tad to cover up those demonic little faces on the side. Corey said it best. It's nightmare. The elves are such nightmare fuel for me that like it is genuinely hard for me to watch these movies. But I think Corey said it best too, though. Where like I had a list of things that I could say that are terrible about this movie, but they're all camp. Like it is for this episode, this show, this whole concoction, like it's a merit in a way, which I think is really cool. It's like you can look at something and say like, well, this doesn't work, this looks cheap, this looks under budgeted, this looks atrocious, the acting is rigid, all that stuff. The girl's low-key racist because she just doesn't accept her black stepfather just cause, and I get it.
Yeah, we don't talk about that part though.
Well, I think there's a very conscious choice when you cast someone, when you cast Tyrese, and you can make that commentary and you don't, it just comes across very just biased because he sings a song. How many Christmas songs do you go to for karaoke? And he happens to pick
my
one.
Dad sang that Christmas song.
Like, fuck off. But no, I really I do think
horrible kid.
No, just like it the reasoning for hating him seemed a little far-fetched to where it seems like there's something extra going on. And if you're not going to comment on it, it definitely comes across that way. But regardless, that's something that I might have picked up that other people don't, and maybe wasn't intentioned. I think I could go through all the things that don't work, but I do think it's important to note that if you're looking at it from a camp angle, I think it works much better. And I think that's the thing is like you have to kind of buy into the fact that it is kind of schlocky. I don't love the whole like Netflix kind of sheen and studio feel. Like it doesn't feel like there's any sort of artistic like point of view necessarily, especially Chris Columbus, who has had such a great like artistic point of view for stuff like Harry Potter and even Home Alone. I don't like the Home Alone movies, but he does at least have a very certain point of view for those. So yeah, maybe I'm just not the biggest fan of like just the whole like Netflix style. It felt very much like they had the star and they had the idea of like, we want to make Kurt Russell Santa the focal point, but then like how do you construct two full-length movies around it? And I honestly think it might have been better if like maybe you start a sketch comedy show where he is like, like do it in little snippets and like kind of find these little fun little pockets rather than telling these bigger full-length stories around him. But I think if you are there to watch Kurt Russell as Santa, it does the job it perfectly. And I think he is so good that it kind of excuses a lot of the underminings of the rest of it. And I do think, like, even though I think it's schlocky, I think it is at least a bold, kind of interpretation of the North Pole. Like, I at least like that the elves do have a style, even though I think it's scary. Like, I watch it and I shiver a little, like Corey said. But I do think, like Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, just to see them together is such a treat. So, there are definitely a lot of cons that outweigh the pros for me. But those cons, if I look at them from a camp perspective, actually elevate it. So I think it's one of those things where I came in here expecting to be like, oh, I got to watch what I say because I don't want to come across as the Grinch here. But hearing other people say it, I'm like, you know what? But it is the camp of it. So maybe it is a positive if you're looking at it from a certain point of view, which I think is a merit to this. But it also is like, you know what? There are other films of this slate that are also very campy, but also have really artful, creative lenses to them, like Black Christmas, Christmas Vacation. Like there is at least intention in the style too. So it's like, I feel like you can have the both simultaneously. I actually do want to defend Darby Camp though. I think she is very good. I know, I think it was Corey, you said she wasn't great in the first one. If you guys haven't seen Big Little Lies, she is so good in that show. So like, I really do recommend her, and she's cute in Clifford the Big Red Dog. She does a good job, but I do think, she's someone who I think is going to be a real star when she's older. I hope so, because she's really good. But I don't want to be a Grinch, so I will end it there. But
you're good.
I actually like her in both movies, and in Big Little Lies, she's so good. Yeah, she's so good. I agree with that.
I think where I struggle in the first one is like it is the perfectly good performance for the role, and it's almost kind of like intentional. Like they clearly did the same thing in the second one, right? it just kind of comes off. I don't know. I struggle with. It feels a little Hallmarky in a little ways. There's like this kind of like Hallmark sheen. It's not quite a Hallmark movie. I think that might be the Netflix of it all kind of thing. But you know, I think all of those positives are still very strong.
I will say one last thing,
like a darker Hallmark movie, but go on.
For fans of Julian Dennison, I know Chad said he kind of like had a moment and disappeared, but he's actually in theaters right now. You can see him in Y2K, and he's going to be in the How to Train Your Dragon remake, so go check him out there. He's very much still relevant. Just wanted to clear that.
He is getting roles again,
Yeah. Speaking of roles, I don't know. Let's talk about
the roles in St. Louis.
Okay, you guys are gonna have to bear with me on this one as we talk about it, because right before we started recording, I watched Mildred Pierce, and that has a little girl that is just like the little girl in this movie. So you're gonna have to bear with me if I accidentally say something that one girl did that actually the other girl did. Yeah. So let's talk about Mimi in St. Louis. This one was chosen by our very own Dylan Randazzo.
Ooh.
Dylan, take it away. Tell us why did you pick this movie and what do you love about it?
Yeah, I picked it for two reasons. I wanted to have a little bit of older rep. I mean, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation was the oldest, and it was like the 80s. So I was like, let's go a little bit further back. I wanted to pick something black and white, totally forgetting that this was in color. I fully intended to pick this because I thought it was in black and white, and then I rewatched it. I was like, oh, wait a second. But I do think it kind of taps into a classic Hollywood to show that like the camp can take on different forms, and I think like this is a different type of camp. It's very much, not schlocky, but it is silly. It is like the little girl Tootie singing drinking songs, and they're performing under the bamboo tree, and she's like fucking like getting hit by something and then blaming it on the guy, and like there's like little like crazy instances where it's like this girl's extra, but like I think that makes a lot of the charm of it, that it is a very silly, very heightened. I mean, the trolley song, it is very not just campy, but very queer coded as well in that sense. And I think that's important to note. Like camp can take on different meanings. It's not just schlock. It's not just so bad it's good. It's not just excess, but it can also be queer. It can also be very sexual. This isn't that. I almost picked Christmas in Connecticut as that. But I figured, let's go for the silly camp rather than the sexual camp. But I do think, like Mimi in St. Louis, I think it works alone as a movie without the camp. Like I think it just has some really great tender moments, and I think that's mostly to do with Judy Garland. I think she just brings such just a infectious, like she just commands your eyeballs. It's like not to go back to Black Christmas in that sense, but she really like demands your eyeballs when you watch this movie. She makes you want to lean in and just like soak up everything she's saying, and when she cries you cry too. Like she's just a magnetic actress, and I think this movie, we've seen a lot of other movies like it. It's like chronicling the life of a family, Little Women, and even It's a Wonderful Life in a sense. But I also think I've heard the people say it's not a Christmas movie, and I do agree, like it's not fully a Christmas movie in that sense, but also in the same way of It's a Wonderful Life, it's almost like what the family has gone through the entire year builds to this final climactic Christmas moment where everything kind of comes together and reconciliation is made. And I think the buildup is important because that's kind of what Christmas is. Yes, it is a season, it is a time of year, it is a month, it is a day. And for some people, it's mostly a religious thing. But I also think it's also kind of that exhale after a full year's worth of trauma and grief and stress and work and moving and dynamics and relationships and flings and friends. And I think that's what this movie is. It's showing that the progression of this family throughout the year can then lead to this exhale at Christmas. And Christmas is about trying to let us kind of breathe after all we've gone through together. And I think that's why it is a Christmas movie, very, blatantly. I think it's because it's kind of showing that everything you've been having building up over the year has kind of come to this catharsis at the end of the year. And I think that's really beautiful. That's a really beautiful sentiment. I mean, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas comes from this movie, and it is arguably the best Christmas song ever written, ever made, ever sung, ever designed, orchestrated, period. So yeah, I just think, this is an enjoyable watch. It's a breezy watch because it chronicles a lot of different seasons. It feels very chapter-esque, flies through. And I think the songs are great. There's something about just like that 50s, 40s 60s. I don't know why I went out of order there, but like that golden age of cinema from movie musicals where everything's just so colorful and, you know, the camera doesn't need a cut every second like all the movies you see in theaters now that are musicals. It's like, no, it can just live and sit and breathe, and like you're looking at the trolley and it's the trolley. Like it's not all these crazy camera things going on. It's a musical. It lets itself be a musical. And I really like that. So I also have a personal connection to this, as both of my sisters, this is a fun fact. So in like summer theater camps and stuff, when there's a lot of kids and they want to spread the wealth, they double cast, which means like you get 2 performances and you get 2 performances. And both my sisters, Nina and Kelsey, got double cast as Tootie in a production of Mimi and St. Louis when they were younger. They're 5 years apart. So Kelsey was a very cute little 10-year-old Tootie, and then Nina was a 5-year-old Tootie. And like, I can't believe Nina learned all those lines at that age. So like, I have a fondness of just watching both of them do it on stage, not together, obviously. And then Zach, my brother, played John in that production as well. So I have a sentimental family bond to this too, because, you know, I've seen this on stage first, and like my family members have been in it. So I also have just that fondness for it. So I was like, you know what? I know at least one of this panelists hadn't seen it yet, and I was like, "What are you doing? You call yourself a Christmas fiend? Let's make him watch it." And I'm talking about Chad. So I was like, but I really wanted to pick this, so like, you know,
I've seen it before.
Oh, okay. Well, then someone had told me they hadn't seen it.
I hadn't seen it.
I hadn't seen it either.
Okay. Well, then I'm glad. But for some reason, Chad, I felt like Chad had told me for a while he hadn't seen it. Did you just watch it recently, like in the last few years?
Yeah, maybe. Yes.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
So maybe when we
Recently.
first met, like, yeah, you hadn't seen it yet. But either way, I think this is an underappreciated one because it doesn't have Christmas in the title. It's not like overtly about Santa or anything like that, even though I think the most iconic images and songs and moments come from the Christmas stuff. So that is why I picked it, and I'm very glad I did. I hope I said that quick enough. I wanted to get all I had to say about it, but I didn't want to go into a deep dive. But that's kind of what this episode has been. It's just like a bunch of deep dives, but it's fine.
What you said was great. It was incredible. I hadn't seen this since I was a kid, and in defense of it being a Christmas movie, the entire third act is Christmas, and everything that happens leads up to is leading to that third act stuff. So I think that in that way, it definitely makes it a Christmas movie because that's what everything's leading to.
I mean, it's like a war film, how like the first 2 acts is about the battle and the planning, and then the third act is the battle. You know, but it's still a war film, even if it's not all taking place on the battleground. You know.
I really like this movie. It's my second favorite Vicente Minnelli, Julie Garland production. Number 1 being Liza Minnelli.
Oh wow! I did not know that. That's great. Very well done, Matt.
That was a great little joke. I love that. That was great.
The goddess, Liza Minnelli. It's really fun. It's funny. It's campy. That trolley scene is obviously iconic and tells you a lot about that character, and it is very just campy. And there's Tootie. Is that Tootie? Is that her name?
Tootie.
Is that how we say it right?
Yeah.
And this is from this movie, right? She is obsessed with like death and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all very, very funny. I was making sure that it wasn't the girl from Mildred Pierce. But that's all very funny and super relatable. She does create this cursed son of a bitch.
I love it. I love
terrified.
But thankfully, in the end, does go destroy that family of ungodly creatures that she created. I told them this in a text, but I had paused to take that picture to tell them how cursed it was. And my 13-year-old walked in the room and goes, "Well, that's the thing I see in my closet at night," which was very funny and made me very proud as a dad who likes to make jokes. Because he was saying how creepy it looked. You said everything. It's that. I think it is a Christmas movie. I think it's very campy in a lot of places, and it's just very enjoyable. I really like this movie. I'm going to move it on to someone who saw it for the first time. Let's go with Stacy.
Okay, yay, because I actually did want to talk about this one. So I'm not here to argue whether or not it's a Christmas movie. I have differing opinions on that, but that is not the point. It was allowed for this. So I'm going to treat it as though it's a Christmas movie.
You at least get what I'm saying, though, right? Like, I make a good case.
Yeah, sure. I mean, White Christmas was sitting right there, but whatever.
Haven't seen it.
I really, really liked it. Just, whether or not it's a Christmas movie, I freaking love Tootie. Love her. Despite the fact that they caused the railway accident and they're very proud of it. And what was with the kids at also not a Halloween movie, but we have Halloween in it. What was that? Like, the Halloween stuff was insane. Like, is this how Halloween was then? Did I just miss like the craziness of an old timey Southern Halloween? Are they into? No, they're in Philadelphia. It's not really Southern, but yeah, I liked it a lot, and I thought it did have some great campiness to it because a lot of stuff was really over the top. And there was a phone call. I don't even remember really what happened. I just remember like, oh my God, like this phone call is so over the top when they couldn't really hear each other. And I really enjoyed that. And so I'm glad that you made me watch it. It will not be a Christmas time watch for me in the future, but I will probably watch it again.
Good.
Will you at least watch the scene, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas scene on YouTube during Christmas time?
Probably not. Being honest.
Come on, Stacy.
I mean,
Listen to
you want me to lie to you? Yes, Matt. Every year.
But on our game nights, we will be singing the drinking song, Tootie's drinking song.
Yes,
I was
absolutely.
drunk last night,
Nice.
dear mother.
That Halloween scene was unhinged, and the like, I killed him. He killed him. She killed him.
Right?
That whole thing. It was
The fire,
so
the burning. I don't know those. They're all dressed like hobos. Like, why is that like what you wore in Halloween? Just everybody was a hobo. I don't.
And
know.
I love how
I
she
loved
splits
it.
She splits her lip and is like can't walk. You know, like,
Right?
she's like, they hit me in the face, and she's like, I'm limp. Like
Like, Cody's the worst kid to have, but the best kid to witness.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I love her. Corey.
I gotta start by saying St. Louis is boring. Go Cubs.
Oh my God! I said it was in Philadelphia. What the hell's wrong with me? It's obviously in St. Louis. Okay.
But yeah, just got to get that out of the way. It feels like this is kind of watching part of. There's one section of Disney's Carousel of Progress that's around this time frame, and it's this family story, right? And I think one of the strongest parts, we haven't really talked much about Judy Garland. This is actually my second. I don't think I've seen her in anything but Wizard of Oz. Absolutely incredible. I could listen to her sing me the phone book. It doesn't matter. I do like the sister plot line, the like cliche local romance. I think one of the funniest parts of the movies is they're like talking about turning off the lights, like it's this like very risque thing, but like nothing really ever happens with that. But I really enjoy it as like Dylan said, 1940s. Anything that starts with in Technicolor, I'm just like, ooh, yes, please. We love me some Technicolor movies. So it's like in that right, like golden age of Hollywood kind of time frame. Obviously, you know, Judy Garland, very iconic. I don't think it's the most Christmassy movie ever, but I think I agree with Dylan's point. Some of the best parts of the movie are the Christmas parts. I really like the dynamic with the daughters. I do think that teenage romance, and then what do we say the little girl's name is? Tootie. That's an absolutely hysterical knockout role and performance. And yeah, very maniacal child that I aspire to have been when I was a child. So yeah, hobos for Halloween. I guess it was the 1900s, right? That's just what you did then. And classic moving to New York story. Like it's a very I don't know if this like set the trend, but it feels like dad's getting a new job in the big city kind of thing. I feel like that's a cliche for a bunch of other good family movies. So I think it's very strong as this slice of life movie piece. It was obviously made in the 40s, but about an earlier time frame. And I think we don't really see, no one's making a movie in the 1900s these days, really, you know? So these movies that are like a slice of time are few and far between, and especially for like certain eras. And the further we get away from it, the further it's going to look like it actually would have looked, you know? So that's a really cool aspect of this film for me.
Yeah, I dig it. I agree. I think the look of that is very compelling. Indeed. Chad.
Yeah. Well, first off, I have to say that I've been listening, but if I've been distracted, there's a very good reason why. Elliot just walked for the first time.
That's so exciting.
Oh my God.
Very Christmassy.
You should have turned the camera.
Right?
You should have live streamed it. You could have been a millionaire, Chad.
I can't believe we have it documented too. Like on. Oh my God.
Wow.
Well, you at least have me going in and out of frame,
Yeah.
So it's Puss in Boots
reacting
and
to
Meet Me in
this.
St. Louis, Chad. Those are the benchmark movies.
Those are the
first time
two.
you felt him kick, and now, yeah.
Elliot, when you're a teenager and your dad is showing you this, to say this is when you started walking, go watch Black Christmas. It's a pretty good.
Oh my God, this is crazy. This is wild.
He'll be a horror fan.
He'll be singing Tootie's drunken Christmas song. And like
he might not revolt. What is the freaking word when kids go against their parents?
It's revolting. I mean,
Well,
that's a
it
form
is
of
one,
revolution.
but that's the one I'm thinking of.
Rebelling?
Rebel. He might rebel and not be a horror fan. Like my daughter rebelled and was conservative, not politically, but like
horror
in
fan.
behavior.
Maybe.
Yeah. So you never know.
That's a good point. But anyways, regardless of that, meet me in St. Louis.
Who cares about the movie, Chad?
I think that's it. I don't know how we could
Wrap it
follow
up.
that.
Wrap it up, folks. This is it.
Oh my gosh.
All right,
Yeah,
Black Christmas
anyways,
wins. No, I'm just kidding. Go on.
Well, okay. I mean, briefly, if you guys want to talk about this, he's been standing on things. He's been able to walk holding our hands.
Mhm.
But like to see him look over, see him walking towards me and not
They're
falling.
fully ambulable
difficult.
now, Chad.
I'm just like,
I'm like gonna cry. This is crazy.
anyways, yeah. So,
It's-
so
I've
Okay,
just seen
I
that
take it back. I
time.
love Christmas Chronicles Two, and I like the Home Alone movies.
There's not too much I can add. I mean, you guys, I think, have said most of the stuff that I would have said. I mean, it's just a solid, like, classic film. I love seeing Judy Garland in it. Of course, I love her in, The Wizard of Oz. And I haven't seen too many movies with her in it. So I need to kind of actually, change that because I love her. I love Liza, and that stuff. I think the family dynamic is pretty sweet. I think there's some like funny like lines and back and forths from like the I think it's the mother. I thought she was like the cook for a while, and then I was like, no, wait, that's the mother, I think. But then the little girls, I think that's kind of where a lot of the camp comes from. Is when they're like trying to ruin this guy's life by saying that he assaulted a child, and then they're like laughing about it later. Like they don't really get punished, I don't think.
No, everybody laughs. They all laugh about it.
Is
But
going
they're
on
derailing
right
a railway car. I just can't. Like, they all think it's hilarious that the little girls derailed a railway car.
I'm just like, how are they just fine right now? And it's like, oh, you Tootie, kind of a deal. It's like, that does get really campy. I mean, I feel like that's kind of where the camp ends because then it just kind of becomes like a very sweet, like, Dad's uprooting us and taking us far away, and we want to stay here with all of our friends. And the young women are trying to find their men and stuff like that. And there's a lot of that, which I think is pretty great. And for like a Christmas, thinking about it as like a Christmas movie, I do think it could work as a Christmas movie. Like it does have a lot of that family aspect to it, and then it ends with around Christmas time. It just, instead of being right there at Christmas the entire time, it just shows a little bit before that and the lead up into it, just as like Dylan was saying. So yeah, I think it does work. Maybe more than Stacy. What is it? the other not Christmas movie that everybody says is a Christmas movie.
Sound of
It's
Music. Please don't get
Sound
me
of Music.
started. That's a cinema
Stacey-
soapbox if ever there was
Stacey-
one.
Yeah, when Stacy does a soapbox, it's going to be that, I'm sure. But how that's not a Christmas movie. But yeah, I think it works.
saying.
I think it has a little bit of camp in this, not a ton, but I think it's just a sweet like family movie. It's not one that I love or would be rushing back to, but I do think it's baller as hell that it like created one of the greatest like Christmas songs, and it's just so amazing to see that scene and her singing that. It's just great. So yeah, I'm glad Dylan picked this. I thought it was really sweet.
Oh yeah, me too. We didn't talk about him, but the grandpa is so good. I love him so much from start to finish. And what's fun is that like he's kind of a cantankerous old man, but he's always sweet to the girls. Like I love that. I love that. I did want to talk about, because Chad mentioned that he thought she was the cook, that they were making ketchup, and I like that little scene where they're all going through talking about what's wrong with it. It felt very real. Like it reminded me of like my mom would always let me taste the baked beans before she like finalized it, and I'd always have something to like, you need to add this, like that kind of thing. Like it was really nice and felt very much like a real family. However, when the grandpa finally comes and tastes it, we're watching her pour the thinnest ketchup I've ever seen in my entire life in these things, and he says it's too thick. And I'm like, what?
What made you ketchup?
It's already water.
Then?
That's back when ketchup was catsup.
What do you want?
I don't want to know.
Gazpacho?
I don't want
Jeez.
to know. Yeah, right.
Anyway, yeah, I really like the grandpa a lot. He made me very, very happy. But speaking of grandpas, actually, this works. It works. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yes.
And maybe some other landmark thing will happen while we're talking about this movie. All right, so National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation was picked by Corey. Corey, go ahead. Tell us about why you picked it and why you love it.
This movie is a movie I watch at least once a year. It's probably the movie I've seen the most in my lifetime. Probably hands down. Probably like close to like 40 or 50 times at this point. This is the first movie that gets on when we have like a lazy family day. We're from Chicago, so like this is like the perfect Christmas movie. My parents are also kind of an older generation, and we really like all of the vacation movies, but Christmas Vacation is the one that gets put on the most by and far. I think it's just this great, family holiday story. I think that's really, obviously the vacation movies are about family. But it's a really good family story. Chevy Chase, regardless of his niceness in real life, because that's come into question in recent years, apparently. Little baby. Hey, bud. This movie is hysterical on multiple levels. It's kind of this 1980s classic holiday film. The jokes in it hit every single time, every year. I do think that Randy Quaid is an absolute killer as cousin Eddie, like maybe one of the most iconic like family member characters of all time. And everything he says in that movie, I literally watched it this morning on one of those typical lazy family days. Already, I was like, this is what we're watching, and everyone was like, yeah, sure. So like, it's the default movie. But year after the year, there's always something new that you find out or like pick up on in that movie, and it's funny. I've been watching it for 40 years. There's a line, there's a reaction, there's something in it that's just absolutely hysterical that you haven't really noticed before or remember. And I think it's just the sign of a great comedy, right? Infinite rewatchability comedy in my mind. So few and far between for that. I think the Christmas stuff is integral. And then like the last thing I'll say, and people will go into more detail, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Richard Guest, I think, Nicholas Guest, absolutely iconic neighbor characters. So
absolutely. Like you, my family was also vacation people. Like we loved the vacation movies. We had them all. We watched them all the time. I'm a huge fan of the Vacation franchise, even Vegas Vacation, which a lot of people don't really care for. I love that movie too. I actually haven't seen the new Vacation movie, mostly because everyone said it sucked. I didn't want to ruin anything.
The one with Chris Hemsworth in it?
Yes, and I think it's very underrated.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna give it a shot.
It has its moments. Not all of them are Chris
Hemsworth. Ed Helms cannot hold Chevy Chase's jockstrap. I'm sorry.
But I love all four of those original movies. And this is going to be, if you've ever heard me talk about the Tim Burton Batman movies, this is going to be a very similar situation where I loved it. I loved this movie. And then at some point I started to kind of not like it as much as I used to. And the main reasons are because I love all those movies. And one of the great things about that movie is that Russ and Audrey are played by different characters every single time. In 3 of the 4 movies, they are a specific type of person. And they completely fuck that up in this one, and that's part of it. Mm-hmm. It's not so much that I don't like that part of it. It's just like they change dynamic. They don't go anywhere. It doesn't feel like the rest of the Vacation movies. However, I have reappreciated them like the Tim Burton Batman movies. I have reappreciated this movie as kind of years have gone by. And I do love it. I watch it every year as well. But it's also part of it is that like I've always loved the Audrey character, and I'm not a fan of Juliette Lewis, and so that always kind of bugged me. But there's a lot in this I really, really love. I forgot to do it with the other movies, but I was going to connect each of these movies to Black Christmas. And there's a burning Christmas tree in this one, and one in Black Christmas. But I really enjoy this movie now more than I used to. Chevy Chase is obviously hilarious. I think the unsung hero of all of these movies that does not get the credit she deserves is Beverly D'Angelo.
She has all of the reaction shots. She
fires on all cylinders. She is the reason Chevy Chase's stuff is so funny, is because she is the straight man to his fool. Yeah. She's amazing. She doesn't get the credit she deserves, and I love her. So I will let someone else go next who would like to talk. I'll just Dylan. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No. One little note on the. I don't know if someone said remake or sequel. The newest one is a sequel. It is Rusty grown up, and Chevy Chase and them are in it too. So just wanted to say. So he's not holding a candle to Chevy Chase because he's not trying to be Chevy Chase. But no. Anyway, this movie though, I do enjoy it. I think this is the most canonized of any of the movies we're talking about today. I feel like Matt and Stacy's picks are a little bit more deep cut. Like not a lot of people have seen those, and even like mine, like me and St. Louis is. Canonized, but not a lot of people like necessarily watch it every Christmas. And then Chad's movie's so new that I feel like it's very buzzy. But I feel like Corey's like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is like part of the canon. It's like the movies that you see repeatedly played on television. It's Elf, it's Home Alone, it's A Christmas Story, and it's this. Like those are the big 4 I think that you get. And even It's a Wonderful Life, I don't see it on loop as much as this one. So I feel like there's almost so much to say about something that has been just like played to death and watched to death. But I think there's a reason why it is canonized. I think it's because it's iconic, because it has great Christmas flair and atmosphere, and it's funny. The only 2 knocks I have against it, one is just that I love the road trip nature of the first Vacation movie, and for a movie called Vacation, it does feel like very stationary. But again, it's not road trip; it's vacation, and you go to somewhere for a vacation. I get it, but I like the road trip nature of the first, and I guess most recent one, and then also. Some of the stuff with Clark, like kind of fantasizing about other women, it hasn't aged too well, but it's also something that like I could see why there is an audience
of its
for
time.
that.
It's very
Yeah,
of its time.
Yeah, like I don't
And
personally
it's in all of
dig
them
it as
too.
much.
Like it's
Yeah, but and that's the thing. It's I watched this one the most, so I can't really. I haven't seen the other ones except for the first one, this one, and the newest one.
Oh.
So like I don't necessarily know all the tropes of all of them, but I do think this one, because I've seen it the most of them all,
Mhm.
I feel like I've noticed it the most here. And just like the gag with the diving board and all that stuff, kind of referencing like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, like all that stuff. It's like, all right, like the first time I laughed, and then after repeat viewings, I'm like, all right. Him buying the stuff in the store. But anyway, I think those are two little things, and I really do think it is just a very engaging, very entertaining watch. So, again, not a lot to add that, for a classic that has been talked about so often, but definitely a reason it's canonized for sure.
You should watch European Vacation. It is vastly underrated.
I should.
Very
I'll watch that if you watch the new one. We'll watch it together. We'll double feature it. Cool.
All right, Chad. I
Yeah,
cut you off earlier. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Christmas Vacation. I'm wearing the sweater. It is fantastic. It is one of those that you do want to watch every year. And the reason for it is because it's a great like family tale. It's hilarious. It's just one of the best. I do have like a couple of issues with it off the top that like for me make it a little cringe to watch at times, and that's just very specific parts with where it's like Clark at the the with the gift or was the perfume counter with the girl with the woman, sorry,
At Marshall
and
Fields.
I'm like, this is a little cringe just because like I feel like it's very like boomer dad humor that, well, I mean, it makes the movie work for more than just me. But then again, it's just for me, I'm just always like, oh no. And especially like knowing that Chevy Chase is the guy that he is, it does sometimes kind of filter through for me where I'm like, all right, this is what it is. And then you get like the dream sequence, where with the pool and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? It's a National Lampoon's movie, but I'm like, you know what? I could do without a lot of this stuff. And then for the final one is just the cat thing, where of course the old senile lady brings the cat in the box, and then the cat explodes with the tree, and so animal abuse is apparently funny, and I find it very upsetting. But that being said, those are the specific parts that I kind of do not really like, and then everything else in the movie I think is gold. So I love specifically. I love Cousin Eddie. I think as soon as he shows up, the movie just goes from like 60 to 100 or whatever. I just love the rednecks that show up, and then they're just so contrasting to this like normal family. And then you get, of course, him like emptying his commode in the sewer. Shitter is full. One of my favorite jokes of all time in just like any movie is when Clark's telling the kids like, "Oh, I think I hear Santa. I think I hear Santa's sleigh." And then just like a pause and perfect timing of, "You serious, Clark?" That's just like one of my favorite jokes. I think about that sometimes, just in general when Christmas is coming up, and I just think about that joke, and I just sit there and I'm laughing to myself at work, and then I'm like, "This is weird. Just stop it, Chad." And then So really, the very few issues that I have with the movie are very personal problems for me that I don't like, and then everything else is just the best. And it's one of those where I love seeing them chop down the tree. I love seeing the road rage at the beginning. I love seeing him trying to figure out the lights and getting so frustrated and bashing the reindeer and then getting it to work and then messing with the neighbors the whole time is just incredible. The family is all great. It's frustrating when like she closes the attic door, not thinking someone might be up there. And then that leads to a whole thing. And then it leads to also a very sweet scene where he's watching the home movies, which I think is incredible because it adds a layer of, this isn't just a silly, dumb comedy. There's added sentimentality to it. And I feel like that's, extra special too. So yeah, the camp, the legit like writing and acting, all that stuff I think really works for it. Except you have to be able to not hate Chevy Chase the whole time. And then the few times where it kind of filters in a little bit too much, I just don't think it really that overrides the rest of the movie. That's just so good. So, and it's hard to not keep droning on about this movie because it's got so many great jokes and fun stuff.
Yeah, the thing that's hard about Chevy Chase,
and I love Juliette Lewis.
Yeah. Oh well. There's no accounting for taste.
She's a queen. She's a queen on Yellow Jackets. That's all I could say.
Do I get to talk about this movie?
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah, you were next. What are you talking about?
I don't know. It didn't seem like it was going to ever get to me. People just kept talking.
Sorry.
That's how it works sometimes.
No, it's fine.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to point out a thing. The thing about Chevy Chase that's hard is that the character that he plays is just this apathetic asshole, and that turns out to be who he is, and that's what makes it hard. But you know, the vacation movie's Fletch. That's the kind of character he plays. But he's still very funny, and so it's very difficult. I will also say that you did call it animal abuse, and the cat did it to itself. No animal.
Call that natural selection.
That no animal was abused in this movie. But I do understand you don't like violence against animals, which I appreciate.
Or bad.
I always thought that one of the funniest things in this movie is when they move the couch, and there's an outline of a cat. Always makes
just
me
because they use it for humor purposes. That's why I'm like, violence against cats is not funny to me. But I understand, like, the outline thing that you said is a funny joke because it's Looney Tunes.
Yeah. But let's hear from Stacy. If she wants to talk about it, I'm not sure if she does.
I think I forgot what I was going to say.
She doesn't. She doesn't really want to.
No, I thought it was a really good pick. I do think that it's very, very quintessential 80s Christmas family movie. Like, everything about it is just so peak 80s Christmas family movie. I also think you guys have talked a lot about all the humor, which I agree with, but it has a lot of heart. Like, the kids, Randy Quaid's kids, you know, them having not had a Christmas really the last year, and that all that stuff with Clark in them, and trying to like give them an actual real Christmas and have Santa come, I think is really sweet. And Chad mentioned the scene in the attic when he's watching the old videos, and I think, you know, that's really sweet. It does have a lot of heart underlying all of the somewhat crass and potty humor that's going on at times. And just like for the t-shirts alone, I mean, shitter's full. Why's the carpet wet, Todd? You know, it's just great. That's all.
No, Margot.
Sure.
Can I throw in one more joke that I love? Because Stacy brought up the kids, and I love that little girl. I think she's incredible in the movie. She's just so sweet. And I just love her joke where she's like, shit and bricks. It's like, don't say that word. Sorry, shit and rocks.
Yeah.
That's very good. I didn't talk about Cousin Randy. Everyone else did, which is awesome because he's great. I do want to mention that there's a scene that is just so real. If you've ever walked through a store with someone who is less fortunate than you, a friend who's less fortunate with you, when they will just kind of put things in the basket with you, and you know, Clark's kind of like annoyed by it, and it can be annoying, but on some level, you're just like, okay, that's fine. I mean, they need that. I'll buy it for them. It's just a very real thing, but not that something that everybody, not a universal experience, but something that's very real, which I really dig about it.
Matt, our second Randy Quaid movie slate in a row. You got a three-peat next because we did Kingpin last month.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You got a three-peat.
Independence Day.
Unfortunately, he's not going to be in any of them for January, but we'll get to that. That was everybody with. Did we all cover this? Okay. Well, speaking of Cousin Randy, let's talk about Nativity now.
Speaking of Cousin
Nativity.
I never do transitions on this, but because Dill's on it made me feel like I needed to pretend to be as cool as him and do these transitions. If you guys don't watch Picture This, you should. He does amazing transitions that are often cringy, but for the good in the best ways. Like very, very good. Yeah. They're camp, yeah. Now I don't remember who picked this. Someone who talks about it all the time. It was that. This is an inside joke because Stacy.
I didn't realize it was a bit. I thought it wasn't a bit at first. I'm like, you kidding me?
Stacy saw her chance to make us all watch this. And
you were the only one that hadn't watched it. You were the only
first
watch. I saw my chance to make you watch it.
I was the only first watch. Wow.
But she did make me watch it the first time I watched it, so it's not like it just was 2 years earlier.
Strongly encouraged by.
I've seen it a few times. I'm kidding. But I did rewatch it once because she talked about it, and I was like, okay, dang, I need to watch that again. Anyway, Stacy, tell us about Nativity, why you picked it, and why you love it.
Well, I picked it to make Corey watch it because it was the only way that was going to ever happen, and I love it because it is so much fun, and I love the music, and I love the kids, and they're really funny, and I don't know why nobody knows about this movie. Even my friend in England had never heard of it. It's an English movie. I was like, maybe it just was never caught on here. I found it on Prime one day, like 100 years ago, it seems like. And now it's not even on Prime. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Martin Freeman's in it. And he's kind of like that hapless dude that's not really got anything good going on in life. And ends up being suckered into putting on the school nativity. And tells a whopper of a lie that then he has to try to make happen throughout the movie, which leads to some of the more over-the-top things, such as the kids going to LA with him without parental permission. So there's the character of Mr. Poppy, who definitely adds a lot of the campiness to this movie. He's just amazing. And again, like, the fact that they let him in this classroom is insane in the first place. But at the end of the day, it's the last 20 minutes that are some of my favorite 20 minutes of any Christmas movie ever. Just the kids' performances and the music, I think, is great. And I will say, even though I didn't know you had already seen it, Matt, I think you might be the only person I know that had actually seen it that I didn't make watch it. But everyone I've made watch it has liked it. I think Chad has liked it the least out of everyone I've made watch it. Most people have liked it quite a bit. So I'll keep making people watch it.
I did watch it, but only because everyone knows I love David Tennant, and he's in the sequel, and I wanted to watch the first one first, and I still haven't seen the sequel.
The sequels are not just gonna let you know. I finally watched them like last year, I think. They're not good. But the first one is definitely worth watching, because I'm sure if anybody out there that is watching this has seen it, I'll be shocked, and I hope you like it if you have. But since you probably haven't, you can watch it on YouTube for now. It's not the easiest movie to get a hold of. I tried to get a hold of a physical copy. I had a digital copy. That got taken away because that's what happens with digital copies. Buy physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I had watched this for that reason, and I think it's very funny. It's there's a lot of like School of Rock and other movies in this, which is not anything knock against it at all. I do agree that last 20 minutes kind of makes the movie. The rest of the movie's good, and I love this movie. It kind of, there are parts that drag, there are parts that are great, there are parts that just make you like go like, why are you even like, what are you doing? Like, it is one of those movies where you kind of have to just accept that the person didn't have, like, there's such an easy answer to this. No, Mr. Poppy was wrong. Was right? First. So, second, after you've already got into it, sorry guys, they canceled it. That happens in Hollywood. So many things that could have easily fixed his problem don't, but you got to ignore those because then you don't have the movie. The movie has to happen. So, so it's outside of all that, I do love this movie. I think it's very funny. I think that Mr. Madden's is insufferable at times, which is to the movie's benefit. I mean that's how you get it's the whole Ebenezer Scrooge thing. I sometimes wish he had become not a knob earlier than he does, but I will say that there's a lot of camp in this. When you were trying to decide, you were like, I'm not sure if I want to do this one. I was like, no, there's plenty of camp in this movie that would be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Everything
When I
Mr. Poppy
rewatched
does.
it, when I thought about it more and like thought about the definition, like I looked up, I have written down like what campy movies are. Then I was like, no, it definitely is very, very campy.
I mean, Gordon Shakespeare alone is just like handles the camp you need, but you add in Mr. Poppy and pretty much everything else that goes in, all the kids. It's all very good, but that last 20 minutes, that performance is so good. It's so funny. So much of it just really works, and it's actually a pretty good. Like the production is good. Like I would watch it. Like which is really cool. It reminds me of, if you guys haven't seen the movie Hamlet 2. It's very funny. I love it, but it reminded me of the Rock Me Sexy Jesus. The whole play, all of that stuff that you get at the end, which is really cool. Yeah, if you haven't watched Hamlet 2, watch it. It's great. But yeah, I really do dig this movie, and especially again, like you said, that last 20 minutes is just on fire. But let's hear from Corey. It was your first time watching, so I would like to hear from you.
Martin Freeman, wonderful actor. Definitely not the kind of performance, probably his most comedic thing, possibly. Very comedic performance as the straight man teacher with no plan. But Mr. Poppy doing the best Chris Pratt, Johnny Karate for a whole movie. Absolutely incredible. That dude brought the energy the whole way through. And I do think the big highlight is, the ending. It's probably maybe got the strongest ending out of any of these movies, I think, in terms of just like a very sentimental moment. And it's like, clearly this is where the most money in this movie had to have been made for like £2 million, because I'm sure they were doing it in pounds over there. And so just like really great to see like this small production movie with probably, I don't know when this was made, but I imagine Martin Freeman wasn't Martin Freeman yet, or was just getting onto the scene. But truly incredible, kind of like Matt said, it's like that School of Rock kind of thing where it's kind of this coming of age story, but from the adult's perspective. And just some of the hijinks along the way are classic school trope things. The going to LA scene is one of the most wild things I've seen in a movie, where the kids are just all of a sudden they're there, but really strong comedic performance, definitely British humor. So, but it definitely feels more, less like super duper British, but very accessible to like an American audience. And so it was like the biggest shock I think I had on this, how much I did like it. And yeah, not much else to say. Just wonderful film made for a low budget, heartwarming ending. Love it.
This was made in 2009, and I mean, he was already on the scene. I mean, he had already done like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and stuff like that. Plus, he is the Jim character on the UK Office, which is kind of, and he's in all of the Edgar Wright.
Cornetto.
The Cornetto. Sorry, the Cornetto. Yes, he's in all the Cornetto movies.
He's in the Cornetto. He's in the first one.
Yeah, he plays Declan.
He is the remember that scene where they're passing each other and everyone has their own like doppelganger in the thing. He is the Simon Pegg doppelganger character.
Gotcha.
And that is because the other person in that played the other character in the UK Office as well. The Cam version of the character in the UK Office. But yeah, so he was on the scene, at least for me. Like he was in a lot. I'm in a lot of British stuff, so he was on the scene for me already at this point. But
now he's a movie star.
Right after this, he does Sherlock and and the Hobbit movies, and then MCU, and becomes and then he is.
And Love Actually was before, I guess.
Love Actually was well before. Yeah, like this was that was
I'm tired.
a few years before. Yeah. So let's hear from Dylan.
Cool. I this is my second watch. The first time Stacy strongly encouraged me to watch it. No, and I'm glad you did, because this is like my favorite, like not my favorite subgenre. My favorite subgenre is animated bear with humans. But one of my favorite subgenres is, loser gets a bunch of kids together to like create beautiful art, because I think it's important to like kind of showcase youth in theater. I think that's really important. It was a foundational part of my life growing up in theater. I think it's important for kids to do theater. I think it really helps them build social skills and social awareness and acceptance and empathy and all that shit in a way that like sports does, but without the discipline of like the pressure of it all. I'd always encourage dance and theater over sports, but I digress. I do think like I tell people it's like School of Rock with a Jesus play. Like I think it's a really funny concept. Like, and I think it's something that can be replicated. Obviously, the sequels aren't great, but I do think just such a clever concept, and it really just allows the premise to kind of speak for itself. Just the fact that these kids are dressing up as like Jesus and Joseph and Mary and all the sheep and stuff, and like performing a musical nativity. Like, I think that's where the camp comes from. I mean, the song One Look, where she's like, he's not my type and she's not too bad. Like, that's hilarious. Seeing the little kids sing like they're adults. Like, that's always so funny to me. Like, it's when they did that viral video going around where they basically did for free the screenplay of Scarface, but had like a bunch of like 8 and 9-year-olds perform it. So it's like this little Tony Montana kid. Like, that kind of shit is hilarious to me. It's so camp because it's like ridiculous, but it's so endearing as well. Just the message it spreads about theater, kind of bringing us together in a way that a lot of films are. Like Theater Camp that came out a few years ago is a very similar thing as well. A lot of the Christopher Guest movies, even though those are about adults, kind of tap into a similar thing as well. It's about building a community despite it being a very dysfunctional one, and I think that's really beautiful. And I do think the music is solid. I think it has some bangers. I think it's well sung. The kids are talented. I think that's another thing too, having really talented kids. We talked about it earlier on when Corey and I were airing our grievances about the Christmas Chronicles kids performances. Like, sometimes kid performances are rough, but I think, here they're all really good and they're all really cute and they're all British, which helps even more, So, it's the reason we all love Harry Potter, it's because, those cute little British kids, they're so sweet, the little accents, how adorable, but I really think they really capitalize on that and make a really endearing story. It feels very similar to The Office in its style of humor, at least the British Office. So like, yeah, I just think this checks all the boxes. It's very Christmassy, but it also leans into the religious side of Christmas that I think, if you're not a religious person, can be seen as like satirical and in a funny way. You can kind of laugh at it. But if you are religious, it can also be kind of endearing. Like, oh, look, they're like telling the story of the nativity in a unique way. Like, I think it can be seen in either perspective, which is really hard to do. Because when you try to satirize like religion, it could be seen as like an attack, or or the other end where it's too overindulgent, where I think this like has a really good balance. So yeah, I really love this one. I'm glad I revisited it. I wish it was more accessible. I really, really wish it was, because I think more people should check it out. It is on YouTube, at least for the time of our recording, if you can get it. I don't usually, advocate for piracy unless it's physically impossible, which it seems to be here. If you were a Netflix DVD person, you have that DVD. Hold on, for God's sake, hold on for dear life, because it is worth. It's going to be worth something, I think, unless they bring it to Blu-ray or give it a 4K release or something. I don't think that's going to happen, but hey, if I have any say in it, if I ever get in the right ear, I will advocate for it.
Every year I'm terrified it won't be on YouTube anymore and I won't be able to watch it.
Yeah, because even the one that's up now, I think was only uploaded like 11 months ago, so it must be a new upload, because the old one, I don't know.
Yeah. Dylan, you were right when you were talking about like the kids doing Scarface and stuff like that. It reminded me of a movie I think you would like if you've ever seen it. Have you ever seen Bugsy Malone?
I've not.
It's an Alan Parker movie where it's a mobster movie, but all the mobsters are played by children. It's from 1976. Jodie Foster and Scott Baio are the leads, and instead of guns, it's pies.
Yeah, I'm watching this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know if I have time this week, but I'll watch it soon. Yeah,
but you definitely need to. It seems right up your alley. Anyway, Chad, Stacy threw the gauntlet and said you like it least. So I'd love to hear if she's correct or not.
Better?
Yeah, she kind of called me out there, didn't she? But
Oh,
I mean,
dang.
I didn't say you didn't like it. I just said of all the people you've liked it the least.
to be fair, in like Stacy's defense, like I haven't like been the most kind to the movie as a whole, just in the past. But this is also like a movie that this is my only my second time seeing it, and the first time I don't know how much of a shot I actually gave it. My attention might have been divided during that time. I'm not sure, but what I remember in the past was that I thought the movie until the end was just fine, and then the last 20 minutes or whatever with the big show number or the big play musical is incredible. And this rewatch, I've gained a new appreciation for it to where now I just kind of love this movie. So I'm really glad that Stacy has been this like defender of this movie that not many people have heard of, because it got like a lot of us, maybe not Matt, but it got a lot of us to actually give it a chance and then be like, okay, wait, what is this ending? This is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And becoming a father watching this, it's only gotten better for me. Where like I see all these kids doing the cutest performances and funniest performances that I've ever seen. I'm a School of Rock aside. It's similar to School of Rock, and you definitely see those themes and tropes and stuff when you're watching it. You're like, this is School of Rock right here, but not in a negative way. I think it's only in the best way, because if you love that type of movie, you'll definitely love watching this movie. But yeah, seeing them all doing their different shticks, their different things, like the girl floating around in the sun or the moon or whatever she is, the show, she's the star. And you have like the kids that turn it into like a boy band pop performance at one point. It's like, come on. I'm like, this is like, I don't know how to like comprehend what's happening right now. It's the best thing that I've ever seen. And I want to replay this in so much. But yeah, I'm so glad that the movie as a whole improved for me. Oh, especially when you see it cuts to the parents and the audiences watching the kids. It's incredible, because I'm like, just in a few years, I mean, Elliot just walked for the first time. Soon he's going to be like, maybe I was a theater kid too, Dylan. Maybe Elliot will be in a play soon. And then I'll be one of those parents, like, even if it's not good, I'm just going to be like, this is the best thing in the world.
I do want to clarify, I am all for kids playing sports as well. I also came from a sports family, but I also think if you're going to do sports, also do theater. Give them that option of, because I think artistic, creative, or even if not theater, like painting or art, some sort of art. Like I think it's keep art in schools. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
But I will say that I do think like I love some British humor, but not like always. And always, I don't always pick up on it. But like when I do, I really, really enjoy it. So I feel like the second time, really like honing in on it, I really did love that character you guys are talking about, that you love, the sidekick guy who comes in is just like, dressing up, and just he comes in, and you have Martin Freeman being a stick in the mud the whole time, like trying to like, this isn't going to work. And stuff like that kind of guy. And then you got this guy who's like, let's go on a field trip to see babies being born. And I'm just like, this is insane. This is amazing. So I loved all of that. I thought that a lot of the humor just overall throughout worked for me way more this time. And I feel like this is gonna be, fate's allowing, one of my yearly watches, just because of specifically that end scene. Like you guys are on the money. If it didn't have that, I don't know if I would watch it too often. But that end scene, I just have to watch every year, maybe even throughout the year, because it's just one of the best things. And I'm just hoping that it does become more available. It looks like it's available on Amazon on Blu-ray, but only for a specific region.
Which I'll also advocate, region-free players. Don't buy the corporate.
I've gone through this every year. I guess I'm just going to suck it up and buy a DVD, because I think that's all I can get. But yeah, it's it's not fun to try to find. And it's dumb because the sequels suck and they're everywhere. And I'm like, why did they bury this movie? I don't understand it, but that's a different thing. My daughter does expose people to it as well. So maybe between the two of us, we'll just get enough people out there to be fans.
I would like to give a shout out to Clark Peters, who plays the Hollywood executive at the end. During the whole Delroy Lindo was snubbed discourse, which I agree with. I think that he definitely was snubbed for Defy Bloods. Clark Peters was also snubbed for Defy Bloods because he was also incredible. But I just want to give him a shout out there. Speaking of shout outs, we've got no more movies to cover. We're back to now this is the point in the show where we are going to do our rankings. Before we do that, I want everyone to know that I like all of these movies very much, and where I rank it is not a reflection on how I feel about you or anything except for where I ranked them in these movies. So without further ado, I am going to start the ranking at my number 5, which is Christmas Chronicles 2. Dylan?
Started at the top or bottom? Should I start with bottom?
Sorry.
Christmas Chronicles 2. Yeah.
Chad?
And I will preface before saying I'm glad everybody gave that movie a chance, even if everybody does rank it number 5. And also, I liked all of these movies. So my 5 is still a movie I liked. But my 5 is Black Christmas.
I'm offended. No. Stacy.
Christmas Chronicles 2.
Okay. And Corey.
Christmas Chronicles 2. I like the first better.
All right. And then that brings us to our number 4. And gosh, I'm going to feel bad about all of these until we get to the top. But my number 4 is Nativity, even though I love it. Dylan.
Yeah, my 4. Oh my god, it's Christmas Vacation, but that feels wrong to say. I'm sorry. I feel bad because it's like we each picked a movie, so I feel like I'm not ranking y'all, but it's like extensively. I like feel bad putting Chad and Corey's movies at the bottom. But I'm like,
I don't think anybody is ranking based on how much they like people. Let's just put that out there. So apologize.
I agree, but I don't want y'all to take it personally. You didn't make the movie, so you know.
Chad, what do you have at number 4?
Yeah, I agree. I respect everybody's opinions here. Just because I enjoy watching something a lot doesn't mean that everybody's going to. My number 4, just because I question a little bit of the Christmas of the entire piece, and it's just not one that I love watching all the way through, but still a great movie. Say Meet Me in St. Louis.
Okay. Stacy?
My number 4 is Black Christmas.
Oh, you guys are killing me.
Yours was Nativity, so come on.
I know.
I'm
not upset with you.
It's not personal.
I know.
Oh, I know.
My number 4 was also Black Christmas. But I also hate horror, so I wouldn't say hate, but never something I'm searching out.
I think my dream of this being one of the deep dives is now gone. But my number 3 is Christmas Vacation. Dylan.
It sucks, Matt. I'm so sorry, but my number 3 is Black Christmas.
That's fine. I'm not upset. I promise.
I know. I know. I'm
around.
apologizing. I apologize to Chad and Corey, so I'll also apologize to you.
Gotcha.
Dylan's gonna be full Canadian the whole time.
Chad, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Christmas Chronicles 2. Yes.
Christmas Chronicles 2 is number 3. Okay. Stacy?
I apologize for nothing. My number 3 is Meet Me in St. Louis.
Okay.
Mine is also Meet Me in St. Louis.
My number 2 is Meet Me in St. Louis. Dylan?
My number 2 is also Meet Me in St. Louis. Or St. Louis, whatever. They say it both ways.
Chad?
My number 2 is Nativity.
Stacy?
My number 2 is Christmas Vacation.
All right. And Corey?
Mine is Nativity! !
All right, which makes my number one Black Christmas. Dylan?
My number one is Nativity. Yes. With the exclamation mark.
Chad, your number one is
Christmas Vacation.
And Stacy?
My number one is Nativity.
All right. And Corey, your number one is...
I'm very selfish. I voted for my own pick.
Oh, I did too.
So did I.
I did
That's
too.
fair.
I just hoped the rest of you liked it more.
Chad and I are the selfless ones here. We've learned.
Yeah, you guys are
I'm kidding.
sacrificing yourself so much.
Hey, Chad put his at
which-
number 3. Let's not overlook that.
Yeah, shout out Chad.
Which makes our top two, our deep dives, as Christmas Vacation and Nativity. We're going to start with Christmas Vacation because it was the higher. It was the lower ranked one overall.
Because I said like there's literally like scenes that you like discover this movie. This movie is very clearly split into 3 parts, right? There's before the parents arrive and the in-laws arrive. There's when cousin Eddie arrives, and then there is the section when the grandparents arrive. And every single time the gas like just keeps getting pressed down further and further. And the stars of the movie are absolutely the 2 grandparents. Everyone can relate to a very old person at Christmas that's just saying the most batshit insane things. Saying the Pledge of Allegiance instead of grace is hysterical. Singing the Star Spangled Banner at the end of the film, and everyone's just doing like, it's almost kind of like this choral shot between the family, the cops. Absolutely hysterical. One of the best, funniest one-liners in the whole movie is when Uncle Lewis is saying Great Aunt Bethany can't hear. He describes he says you couldn't hear a nitroglycerin truck drive through a power plant, which would create one of the most largest explosions outside of an atomic bomb ever. Just the most inside baseball kind of ridiculous. The jokes are so specific for things. One of the other jokes, which is maybe the most raunchy joke I've ever heard in any movie ever that probably gets overlooked, when cousin Eddie arrives and he's dropping the 2 kids off at the house essentially, and he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go sleep with my wife in the RV out front, take my kids. He tells her to get the rubber sheets and the gerbils, which prior to this, there was apparently a thing known as gerbling that allegedly Richard Gere had done. Mm-hmm. And allegedly Sylvester Stallone kind of spread that rumor. And that is one of the nastiest things I've ever heard in my life. And the fact that it's just kind of this throwaway line in this classic family movie is the funniest thing in the world to me. Like the fact that this is such a revered movie and gerbling is a joke in it is just the most insane thing I could possibly think of in terms of comedy, and like how like some things can be comedic to people that like really know the inside joke, but it goes over so many other people's heads that don't understand the historical background to the joke. One of my favorite other like kind of like hidden parts of the movie, and one of the great one-liners is when Aunt Bethany gets in the house, she goes, "Is Rusty still in the Navy?" And obviously Rusty's like 12, and you're just like, what is she talking about? But the movie is so good that they show flashbacks of a family member who used to be in the Navy. So she's not actually crazy. She's just old and conflated a bunch of young people in her mind. So it's so relatable on a lot of ways, you know. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up putting Christmas lights on my house with my dad, and like that gag of the Christmas lights that kind of just goes throughout most of the movie. It has such a hilarious payoff, you know. Not only is it just bright and it blows out Julia Louis-Dreyfus's house, with light, but the fact that they cut to the power plant and you got this oh oh, and it's just so over the top. And I think in terms of comedy, there's always these random one-liners that you forget, or there's just so many gags throughout the movie. It's so dense, and I think it's just such a rewatchable comedy. And the fact that it's at Christmas, wonderful.
Did your dad ever staple himself to the roof?
No, my dad did used to go on the roof, but he never used staples. But the whole like very relatable, and my dad like is Clark Griswold. Like he is like the true family man that they kind of like describe there. That's how I feel about my dad actually around the holidays and stuff. So like very relatable in that way.
It's funny because like that aspect of it is something that I often see in Christmas movies and just movies in general that I cannot relate to because my mom was single mom, my dad wasn't around. Like, and we always like we were poor, so we always like lived in apartments. So it was that aspect was never something that I could really relate to, but that made it like. It's interesting because that made it like more Christmas because Christmas movies were always about that thing.
Idyllic.
Like that idyllic thing. Yeah, that was not my experience. So that actually did lead to it. But it's nice to hear that it's weird how that it's nice to hear that isn't something that someone else experienced, even though it's not something I ever experienced. But yeah, that is pretty cool. Let's talk about the camp aspect of this movie. Does anybody have any thoughts just off the top of their head about the camp aspect of it? Corey?
I think one of the campiest scenes in the entire movie is the saucer, the saucer on the hill. It kind of brings upon his like weird food science background that they just kind of sprinkle in there at the beginning of the movie, where he's like my non-nutritive food varnish, which is the most like ridiculous combination of words I've ever heard. But that whole scene, there's a couple of ADR lines in there where he says, stay loose, hang 10 or something like that. He says like some like surfer terms right before it turns into like this clear like CGI effect, like rocket ship going down the hill. I think that's just an all-timer, like good, just like I feel like it's just good physical humor. And then there's like weird dummy shots of like a dummy on a sled going 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it doesn't look like Chevy Chase is there, but that kind of like feeds into it. And then there's the little shots of him that are like he's clearly on just something rotating and stuff. It's just this combination of like making the gag work with the available technologies that they had. Nowadays, that whole thing would just be CGI, right? So it's this kind of like artifact of filmmaking, and it's practical in a lot of ways. And I think, sledding is something a lot of people could probably, just relate to, and very dad thing to do to try to show off.
Absolutely. I think I agree that is probably one of the biggest, just so over the top and ridiculous moments of the movie. It's very good. I think that a lot of the Cousin Eddie holds a lot of the camp, and Todd and Margot hold up a lot of the camp stuff, because a lot of the other things are just regular family dynamic stuff, which is kind of what you need to offset the campiness of a lot of the rest of it. Chad, you had motioned before.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think this movie's just campy like throughout. I mean, it's just got so many different like kind of like slapstick, like Looney Tunes style gags. Like, I mean, right off the bat when he does the road rage bit, and then he gets trapped under the log truck or whatever, and you're like, this like would never happen. This is insane. If it did happen, they'd be dead. But like this, just the way they handle that, I think is really incredible. You guys talked about the cat markings on the thing after they move the tree is very Looney Tunes. Corey brought up a great one that I always kind of roll my eyes at, but then I'm like, why am I rolling my eyes at this when the rest of the movie's kind of like this? Like they have like little bits of like, different kinds of gags throughout. Him trying to stand on the joists in the attic, and then like, during an emotional part, like he like breaks through the ceiling of his kid's room or whatever on the bunk bed. And I don't know, it's just like the whole movie kind of has that like strewn in, even though it does, like you guys are saying, have a lot of like emotionality at times. It has they're trying to become like relatable with the family dynamics and family aspects as different family members start coming in and stuff. But I feel like none of that takes away from the camp. I think it just all works together so well that the camp just, it doesn't distract from the movie. It's just in there just to make you laugh like every 5 minutes of the runtime. I think it's incredible.
Nice. Does anybody have anything else to add, or do you want to get to scores?
I do.
Yes.
I just want to say that I won't read all of the things that are characterized camp, but one of the most outrageous plots, and the kidnapping of the boss, is very outrageous. Yes. And I just love that. I think that's probably my favorite thing that Cousin Eddie does. It's Cousin Eddie, right?
Yeah.
The whole movie. And how it turns out is insane, because that's, not how it would turn out. So yeah, I just wanted to know one had brought that up yet, and I wanted to throw that out there as well.
Like all the cops just burst in towards the end of the movie.
The cops being extremely real against this very farce scenario, and then they just come in, and it's like they're in Starship Troopers kind of all of a sudden. The cops really sell that whole little sequence there. And then
Brian, sorry.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just saying, Brian Doyle Murray in that whole scene is just so good as the boss. He's very funny, and Bill Murray's brother. And
to segue into the like from the camp side to the acting in that scene, that's so great. Is Beverly, like they shout freeze, and then the whole family's like frozen in these kind of comical ones, and Beverly D'Angelo's hand is on Clark's crotch at the time, and then she goes and gives someone the handshake and then puts her hand back on his crotch. Probably would never really happen in this modern day with humor, but like just that bit of acting, and like Matt said, the straight man acting of Beverly D'Angelo is just the perfect foil for Clark, like falling off. Like he is like the king of physical comedy in this. But I think the speeches, holy hell, where's the Tylenol, is something that I say quite frequently. I think the way he just delivers, and like how his like facial expressions are, like he like overemphasizes everything in the face, and is just so fun to watch. Those two, like their reactions, really incredible. And then Cousin Eddie, like iconic character bit, that's just sold to the nth level, even like in the costuming when he's got the black dickie underneath the white sweater, and it's just like, you're not hiding anything, dude. Just the comedic timing and the performance, just one of the funniest performances of all time.
Yeah, I agree. It's very, very good. Let's score the camp real quick. Dylan.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk about the camp yet.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna let you say your part and then give us your score.
Yeah, because my what I was gonna say is kind of related to my score anyway. But like when I was scoring all of these on like camp, I think the thing for me is like the actual contents of like the story and some of the gags and stuff can be campy, but I also think like with some of the other films there were like just filmmaking tendencies, like Black Christmas, the way it's shot, the way it's colored, it's so camp, and Nativity, the kids and the costumes and the singing, which we'll get to. Even St. Louis, same thing, the vibrant colors and stuff. This one is actually I think a little bit more straightforward in its filmmaking approach, which makes it a little less camp from that side. But I do agree. I think the actual bits and gags and humor is maybe the most camp. So it's very funny, like trying to sort through all these films and try to figure out like, oh, which is more campy than the others. Because I think kind of what we discovered on our sports one last month, Matt, is that like the camp is different for each film. It's like Speed Racer's camp is different than Kingpin's camp. They are both very campy, but in totally different ways. And I think that's what was difficult for me for mine. So to segue to my score, I gave it an 8.1. I gave everything above an 8.0 for camp for this. I think all of them, there were some that were in like the 3s and 4 ranges for other things, but this one, every movie in my camp had gone above an 8. So I'm going 8.1 with the camp on Christmas Vacation. I think it's very, very campy.
Nice. Chad, what was your camp score?
You're muted, Chad.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I had a little bit lower, and then after talking about it in the discussion, I've upped it. And I also agree with Dylan. Like I think it's like it's so camp, but it also could be a lot campier. Like, you know, if it wasn't more of a straightforward story. I'll go 8.5.
Okay, Stacy.
Well, I gave it an 8. Just a straight 8. I'm not fancy.
I also gave it a straight 8.
Okay. I'm actually lower than you guys on it, but after hearing hearing what you're saying, I agree with all that. I think your guys' scores are right, but I do have it at a 7.5. It's pretty close, but
it's still all
that's a half a point.
All very, very high. Yeah.
These get degrees, baby.
Yeah. If 5 is average, we are way above it.
Yeah. Which gives us a total camp score on this one of an 8.02. So Corey had segued us into acting already. I had mentioned I've already talked about the actors I really liked in this. Beverly Angelo, Randy Quaid, and Brian Doyle Murray, I think, are doing very good work. Does anybody have anything about acting before we go into scores?
The only thing I would add about sorry, Stacy, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the only way the humor in this movie, in movies like this, works is if they're just at 100 on point the entire time and just giving amazing performances. Because otherwise it's just dumb. It does not work at all. So I think, you know, the acting is 100% what sells this movie.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that the acting is so good, but there is the only thing I detracted from it is the fact that these are already characters they've already spent a whole film building, to where it's like, you know, they already had a lot given to them.
This is the third.
Exactly. This is the third one. So it's like you've had time to like let these characters build and grow and find them, which is an advantage this film has, but also like, you know, it's not as original as some of the other films where it's like you're creating this character from scratch. That being said, the characters that are introduced in this film are taken from scratch, and I think that's impressive. And you know, people could dock someone for saying like, oh well, Chevy Chase is just playing himself, but I also think there's a real vulnerability and like a real I think it was more difficult to put yourself into a role than people would lead you to believe. Just from my own personal experience, I think it's easier to slip into someone completely different shoes and totally transform. I think it's difficult to bring your own self to a role. So like, for better or worse, I think Chevy Chase does that, which some might say is not as impressive because he's just playing himself, but I think that's actually very difficult. So that was a good thing for the acting. So yeah.
I agree. Chad, yes.
I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying. Like, yeah, I do think there's a reason why a lot of these people, not Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, but a lot of these people keep portraying the same characters because they're like perfect in those roles. And I think Randy Quaid is just like the perfect guy to play Cousin Eddie, because he's got like that brilliant, like, you know, I think a lot of, you know, how do I say this delicately? Like trailer park person. Okay, I've lived in the trailer park before. Trailer park person can see themselves like in that character, not as like to the extreme because he's really weird, but like, you know, as far as like, you know, kind of sitting there drinking beer while emptying the shitter. I feel like a lot of like, you know, people in my family love that kind of humor. So I don't know. I feel like that performance is just unparalleled of like that kind of like persona. It's as delicately as I could say that without hopefully not offending anyone.
The only thing I need to push back on is that the suggestion that Johnny Galecki does not play the same character in this, Roseanne, and Big Bang Theory.
That's a good point.
But Chad, go ahead and give us your acting score.
Oh, I'm sorry. Acting for Christmas Vacation. I have at 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me do a 7.0 just because of what I said.
You want to? Okay.
There's a lot of inflation going on. People are being convinced by others.
All right, Stacy, what do you have?
I have an 8.
8. Corey.
I have a 9.
Ooh, 9. Excellent. I also have just an 8.0. Dylan.
In honor of my favorite Star Wars film, 7.7. That's actually not even my favorite Star Wars film, but it's the year Star Wars came out, 77. So, not that it has any relation to do with this movie. I just saw the number. I was like, oh, 77. 7.7.
Oh, I like you. All right.
I hate me, but thank you.
Don't. That puts the acting average score at 7.94. This movie is getting some good scores here.
Very good.
Which brings us to writing. I think that the writing is pretty stellar. I think that the acting kind of brings out what is some pretty good writing, but the acting does elevate the writing. I think the scenarios that are contrived in this movie and the dialogue are both really good. But again, I think the acting does a lot of the heavy lifting with this. I'm just going to give my score right now since I'm the first one on this one anyway. So my score on actually, I don't know the first one, but my score is 7.5 on the writing.
So close.
Dylan.
Yeah, no, I made a face because like I gave it a 7.4. We were so close. Because I agree. I think it's great, but also I think the things that are dated about it come from the writing, and the things I remember most are things that are more visual and directorial and acting than they are writing. But that's not to say it's a badly written film. I mean, obviously it's 7.4. That's high. So 7.4 is where I put it.
Right on. Chad, do you have any thoughts, and what's your score? Writing.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a Christmas movie that people keep returning to every year like this one, and I feel like, one of the best of its franchise, the writing is gonna be really good, but obviously there's some things that I was able to poke negatives at a little bit, but again, that's like a personal thing, so I don't even know if that's like a cut on the writing, if the things that I don't like other people think are really funny. So honestly, I think the especially the funny parts and also the sweet parts are really well written. So I had it at like a 7.0, but I'll up it to 7.5.
Okay, and that brings us to Stacy. Let's hear your thoughts on the writing and your score.
Well, I have no thoughts. Everybody talked. I mean, my score is a 7.
Okay.
I'm not changing it. It's staying a 7.
That's fine. That's good. All right, and Corey brings us to you.
So I also gave it a 7 as well, because I don't really know necessarily how much of it is improv versus written on the page, especially with jokes. I think a lot of the gags that they kind of set up, I think to Dylan's point, how they're executed is really big, but I think coming up with the gags to begin with feels like something in the writing room first. So I give it a 7.
All righty. That's going to bring us to overall quality, and let's start with Stacy.
What's the average we had for?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 7.28 is our average on writing, and then we're gonna So Stacy, let's hear your thoughts on the overall quality of the film, and what is your score?
Well, for overall quality, I mean, I think we've really talked about all of it pretty ad nauseum. I think it's a really fun, really quintessential 80s Christmas family movie. It's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of jokes. It's really funny. And it's something that I might not watch every single year, but I'm going to watch most years. It's going to be on at some point. For overall quality, I gave it an 8.
Corey.
I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think it sets out to be what it is. I don't think it's any genre redefining. I think it is quintessential rather than groundbreaking. So I'm putting it at an 8.5.
Excellent. I have it so because here's even though I watch this the most now, back when I had all of the vacation VHSs, this is the one I actually watched the least often because I watched the other ones a lot more. It was always like my least favorite vacation movie. I loved it as a Christmas movie, but as far as a vacation movie, it was always my least favorite, just because of the connection I had to the other ones. But now I watch it more often. And as I mentioned before, the quality of it I have grown on since then. So I'm giving it a 7. Dylan.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we were going in any specific order, so I didn't want to just step on it. But yeah, I'm right alongside you, Matt. Not that I watch this the least. I actually watch this the most of the vacation movies, but I'm at the 7-ish range. But I thought it'd be more fitting if I gave this a 6.9. So come on, Matt. I thought I'd give this a 6.9.
Nice.
There we go.
Sorry, I had a kid who was needing me at the time. Sorry, you gave it a 6.9. Nice.
Yes.
There
we go.
Sorry, dealing with things. Okay, Chad, let's hear about the overall quality of this film.
Honestly, it's weird because I always think when we talk about a movie like this, or like, no, not a movie like this specific movie and like a panel of people, I think maybe I'm going to be the most negative about it because of the specific things I brought up. But like I've said also, so many positive things. I also really love watching this movie every year. So it's definitely one I put on every single year. I initially put 8.0. But I'm just going to bump it up to 8.5 because I feel the Christmas spirit in me right now.
Okay, so that brings our average on the overall quality to 7.78, and our total or average of all of the scores on that, of all the averages of those scores, to 7.75, which is going to bring us to our second deep dive, which is Nativity.
Nativity, exclamation mark.
Nativity, exclamation point. Let's talk about the camp factor in Nativity. And I'd like to start with Stacy because it's her movie.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, because I have not really talked nearly as much as everybody else, I don't think. So I am going to read this list that I got of what characterizes a campy movie.
Love that.
Exaggeration, a love of unnatural artifice or excess, style over content, defined as a focus on style at the expense of substance, ironic value, I won't read all the definition things, playful reappropriation, theatrical, over-the-top, dramatic close-ups, and outrageous plots, according to Google, are the things that make a movie campy. So originally I did say that I wasn't sure if Nativity was campy enough for this, and it definitely is. Do you want my score first, or do you want me to talk first?
Either way, however you want to do
it. Yeah, it's so over the top, mostly thanks to Mr. Poppy, but I mean, they have like friggin' petting zoo animals that they, I think, steal, almost positively steal, and put in the Nativity show. We discussed the field trip to see babies being born live and in person, in all their glory. There's a death slide thing, which I don't know if was ever fully explained, but it comes up a lot and sounds like a really bad thing to do with elementary school children. There's the kid who's the angel who comes from so high up in the actual production that it's like insanity. And yeah, the accidental kidnapping of children and bringing them to another country. It is very over the top, and obviously it's theatrical. It's about putting on a very fun show, and I just think the camp is actually where all the humor lies for the most part. It does have a lot of heart, but that's not what we're scoring on right now. So for camp, in the end, I gave it a 8.
Corey.
In terms of camp, I'm going to give it a 7. One of the moments in terms of campiness that really sticks out is when they're on top of the church spire and they're like bringing the kid down. Like that is quite literally the most over the top this thing can get in the production. And I think, like Stacy said, that what makes the movie is the camp. It is camp through and through. There is no movie without the campy aspect of it. There are like slightly more. I mean, it's really a very similar version of School of Rock, and that's like that story. It's like kind of this weird coming of age, even though I think this one's less. This is more from the perspective of the adults. So in that way, it's kind of treading a little bit of different ground on that. But definitely love just the whole setup and the execution and tone. British humor, gotta love it. Yeah, 7 on camp.
Excellent. For camp, I initially, back when I was making the scores, I initially scored it a little bit lower. But the more I thought about that last 20 minutes, it's just so campy. And when we were kind of talking about how these scores go, it's not about how much there is about how well it's executed. The parts where it's executed the parts where it exists are executed extremely well. Mr. Poppy, of course, is and Gordon Shakespeare are, of course, very, very campy characters. But that last 20 minutes, I referenced Hamlet 2 before because that movie is so outlandish and ridiculous, and that play that they put on, which is meant to be a sequel to Hamlet, but features Jesus, is just so over the top. And the fact that it reminds me of that so much definitely ups the camp value for me. I ended up going with a 7.5 on camp. Dylan.
Yeah, I am shocked I put this high, but the more Stacy was like rattling off all the things that make something camp, like I think this is just so like there's not a moment of this I can think that isn't camp. Like even just the interactions, the classroom settings, all the characterizations, the flight to LA, everything is just so camp that it culminates in a very campy theatrical thing. And I think that's what it is for me, is like camp is theatricality. I mean, we talked about it last month on Speed Racer. Like it's all about big, flashy, over the top, and for me that's what this film is. I mean, like it has a heart, but it's because it's so overt in its heart, and I think that's one and of the same. So I went 8.8. I went high. I went too high, but I don't care. I think it's so camp. It's so camp. I mean, yes, it's a little bit more tasteful than like the Little Miss Sunshine striptease or the Bad Grandpa striptease, or is it Dirty or Bad Grandpa? Which one's the Jackass one? Bad Grandpa?
I think that's
I don't know.
Yeah, Bad
and
Grandpa.
Robert De Niro's the dirty one. I don't know, but the Jackass one with the kid, where the kid does the whole drag number, like that stuff is also so camp, and I think this kind of fits in the same vein. It's not as naughty as that, but like just the idea of these kids like doing a nativity play, but like making it a rock and roll musical where like they're playing grown men with beards. Like I think it's so funny. Just like when they're painting the little beard on the kid, like that to me is just so hilarious and so funny. And I look back at my own like videotapes from when I was, in theater in like middle school or whatever, and like I'm playing grown men and I have this like taped on beard and shit, and it's just the campiest shit ever. Like I think that's just like the charm of it all. So yeah, 8.8 with the camp. It's the highest score I'll go all day. I won't go higher, but that's pretty damn high. So
Right on. Chad, let's hear about the camp.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just kind of mirror what Stacy and Dylan said. Like a combination of that is just like, the throughout the whole movie, but that end sequence is just campy as hell, and I adore it. So I'll just round up from Dylan's score and give it a 9.
Whoa! Wow. All right. So that is a 9, which brings that to an 8.06 average for camp.
Jesus Christ.
Which is 0.04 higher than Christmas Vacation was.
Oh, really close.
Yeah, it's still very close. All right, so that's going to bring us to acting. Corey, why don't you start about acting in this movie?
You got to start with Mr. Poppy in the acting, right? Like he is this like stick of dynamite that is just launched in this kind of like could be okay movie, And whoever that guy is, I don't know who that actor is, but they shot him up with cocaine every day before set. They had to. Guy was off the walls. Very reminiscent of like a Billy Madison type attitude with these kids. Maybe not quite as adult in some ways, but it's kind of this odd guy that just wants to be part of he just wants to be back in elementary school with like his friends kind of attitude, but he's an adult and he's like, let's go to a petting zoo. And I think keeping that energy up for an entire movie, just like when you like hear about like comedians like Robin Williams, who had that very high energy stuff, you would hear about how they come back like drained after a day on set. So I have to imagine that performance and having to do however many takes, maybe they didn't do a lot of takes on this movie, but having to keep that level up and get the right take with kids, probably a lot more difficult and demanding. So it's just like a wonderful performance. And then like Martin Freeman's just a great straight guy. I mean, he's literally brought in to be the white straight guy in the MCU in Black Panther, so like he's clearly got this lane that he's like known for, and just a wonderful performance from him. And then like the kids, real genuine performances. It definitely felt like they were like, all right, here, do this, let me record this, and they like found a way to put this movie together. And I didn't really find any of the kid performances annoying. They all felt kind of like, they felt like actual rounded characters, and they all had their little arcs, which was just delightful to see at the end,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. What was your score?
I have that for acting a 8. High acting score for me.
High acting. Okay, that's going to bring it to me, which I agree with everything you said. The Mark Wooten is the actor who plays Mr. Poppy. He's very funny. He's not in a lot of things that we know over here on this side of the pond. He's on a lot of British TV stuff.
I was gonna say he's the voice of Peter in Arthur Christmas.
Arthur Christmas. The only movies that I have seen him in are Christmas movies. But he's also in some British TV stuff, which I have seen a little bit of that. I just don't necessarily remember him because I watch a lot of that. But I'm on the same wavelength. He kind of carries the acting side, but Martin Freeman as the straight man. I mean, that's kind of his role in Sherlock too. He plays Watson, which is meant to be the straight man to Sherlock's zaniness. I ended up giving it a 7.5, just under Corey's. But Dylan, let's hear about acting.
Yeah, I also scored this very highly. I had this in 8.5. I just think, for me, it's the kids. Like, I expect great performances from the adults. I expect great performances just in a comedy like this from British comedians, but it's the kids that really do so well that it's like they could be on Broadway. I mean, they're older now, so I don't know. The voice changes usually, kind of put that to bed, that those careers to bed for a lot of kids. But I think at that age, at that time, they could have been on Broadway. And I think they're just so talented, so just adorable, but also like actually genuinely bring it with the comedy. It's not just because it's written well for them. They have to actually bring it to the roles. So I think that's a big plus. So yeah, I think the acting's great across the board. Excellent.
Chad, acting.
Yeah, no, I actually 100% agree with what Dylan said. Like, the acting is pretty decent overall, but like it just kind of like with School of Rock, you have like all these kids that are like pretend not to be good at something just so like in real life, just so like later on they can show their chops. And like some of them are actually really good at playing the guitar or whatever, playing the drums, so that they can show them and they don't have to like, I guess, spend all that time practicing because they're already good before shooting the movie. And then they can kind of show just how incredibly talented a lot of these kids end up being on screen. And I just think it's just so fun to watch that I would just, I mean, it's a little too late now because they're older, but I kind of just wish that I had that as a musical that I could watch just in general, just a longer form version of that. But yeah, I'll also give it an 8.5. I think that's a pretty good score.
Right on, Stacy.
Yeah, I agree, obviously, with pretty much everything said. The only other thing I'd want to say is that I also think even like these small side characters, like the principal, Gordon Shakespeare has been mentioned a few times, even them I thought really did a great job. Like when the principal, when they're at the, I can't even think what it is, but when they find out that they're going to get to use the ruins and she's standing by the chocolate fountain and she's just like accidentally leaning on it and then getting chocolate everywhere. And Gordon Shakespeare is, you've seen the movie. Yeah, I think they all do a really great job. I gave it an 8. I kind of wanted to bump it up now to an 8.5, but since it was my pick, I don't want to inflate it over Christmas Vacation. So I'll stick with my 8.
Excellent. I do want to. It's actually a surprise to me that Chad hasn't mentioned this, but that Pam Ferris plays the principal. She played both Trunchbull and Aunt Marge in Harry Potter.
I didn't realize that she's unrecognizable as Trunchbull.
But okay, sorry. Where is it? Oh god, there it is. You had it as at an 8.
Yes, I'll keep my 8 because I don't.
Okay.
I feel like it's unfair if I bump up my scores last minute.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, so that brings the acting average score to 8.1, which does put it above the 7.94 for
still very close.
Yeah, still very close. Very close. And that's going to bring us to the writing, which is going to be me first. For me, the places where this movie drags, which isn't necessarily a lot, has to do with the structure and not. I think a lot of this is the performance and how it is put together, and not particularly the writing. I mean, the writing for the songs and stuff like that, and the thing is good. But I think that there are points that fall shorter for me in terms of writing versus everything else that this movie has going for it. So for me, I do have it at a 6.5 on writing. Dylan, what do you have to say about writing?
Yeah, originally I had it a little lower, and I am not influenced by this conversation, but I just thought right before we started recording, I was like, you know what? The songs themselves also are really, really clever and really funny, and that's also a part of the writing. Because I'll admit, I could not find the screenplay for this, and I feel like a shitty guess for it. But I don't know if y'all did, but like I couldn't find it anywhere. So I can't like literally judge the writing. I have to go based on what I heard. But I could find the song lyrics, and like just reading through them, like they're really clever. They take the mythology and make it really, really fun and clever. So originally I had it lower than Christmas Vacation because I could actually like read Christmas Vacation, but like just reading the songs and just knowing that like this style humor is a little bit more for me, I dig a little higher. So I went 7.4 for Christmas Vacation. I'm going a 7.8 here for the writing. It was bumped up because of those songs.
Okay. I do want to mention that by calling yourself a shitty guest for not reading the screenplay, you've put an indictment on every guest that I'm ever going to have on this show.
This guy has screenplays on screenplays.
Like we should do.
I didn't know. Well, I mean, it's part of the score, so I figured I was like, oh, maybe he wants us to read the writing because unless you were watching subtitles, I don't know. I can't get a lot of the writing unless I'm actually physically looking at it, but that's just who I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, like that for me. If I sit and read it, I can get a bigger appreciation for it. Which, if you haven't read the substance script, go read it. It's freaking like it makes it even better than it already is. But.
Really?
All right. So Chad.
So me, for writing for Nativity is I give it a 7.5. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's a little bit. I don't want to call it derivative. I just think it works so well on its own, but it's so similar to other stuff that I'm not going to say it's completely original. But like Dylan made a great point. It's also something I've been thinking about too, is that like they kind of wrote a whole musical, which is just like insane and just like amazing. And, just also like the humor in the movie, I just think is so clever and so, well done that for me it feels like it's pretty great, but I'll do a 7.5 because might not be the most original of stuff.
Right on. Stacy.
So this is actually my highest score. And the reason why is the music. I mean, that's the biggest reason that I gave it the score I did. But also, I do think the writing's really clever. I think things like how Mr. Poppy tells the girl's parents that they have to talk to him because he killed the dog with firecrackers. Like, just little things throughout that I think are really funny and clever. And I love the heart. Like, I love how the kids write the letters to Santa, and a lot of them end up being about Mr. Madden, and they do the little video that they send off to the girl. I don't, I watch this movie at least once a year. I don't know anybody's names. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's the music that really bumped this up and inflated this number, and I gave it a 9 for writing. And I have these songs on my Amazon Music that, like, I mean, Sparkle and Shine, I will sing any time of year. So.
All right. Corey, let's hear about the writing.
I'm going to give it a 7. I think where the strengths of this movie lie really is in the performance. I'm guessing a lot of the kids' stuff is maybe not necessarily ad-libbed or anything like that, but it feels like a bunch of, just like they shot a bunch of kids and they're like, let's put it together. And I think it's the performance and selling on that. I think it's the performance of Mr. Poppy. I don't think it's the most groundbreaking, but I think it's very funny. I give it the same score I think I gave Christmas Vacation. So very well-written comedy, just nothing the most groundbreaking. Both of them, I think, very much are about acting performance rather than what's on page.
Right on. Okay, that brings the average for writing to 7.56, which does put it above the 7.28 for Christmas Vacation. I think the writing's on the wall here, gang. But that is going to bring us to overall quality, and we're going to start with Dylan.
Yeah, I just by my ranking, you all probably know I had this higher than Christmas Vacation, but it is very close. I mean, I think all these movies are in their own lanes very good for what they are, and I do think this is just for a silly musical with kids and British humor, like this is the best of its kind, even though there are, as Chad said, like other movies like it. I think, the British of it all and the Christmas of it all makes it a little different than those, which I think is unique and important. And I just think it's such a great little like hidden gem. Like, I really do wish more people saw it. So I'm going to give it an 8.1. I gave it a clean 4 stars on Letterboxd, but I'm bumping up a 0.1 just because I feel like it. And I like that number. So 8.1.
Right on. Chad.
Yeah, I mean the same kind of sentiments that I had for the writing and everything else. I think it's great, like throughout, and that in sequence is one of the best things I've ever seen. So for that, I'll give it a quality in 8, flat 8.
Okay. Stacy.
Yeah, I mean, this score is really just because I really do love this movie. I watch it, like I said, at least once a year. And it's probably one of the best things I've ever found on Amazon Prime for TV or purchases. So I gave it a 9.
9. All right. And Corey?
I'm going to give it an 8. I think it's a wonderful comedic film. Was kind of shocked how much I enjoyed it. It was just this delightful experience the first time. I was like, I really like this a lot. I think there's some low points in the middle there a bit, just in between some of the like more interesting scenes in the middle act, like, going to LA, stuff like that. I do think I really like how real it gets when they get to LA and she's like a script assistant or something like that. And they've all made it out in their heads to be that she's like a big producer and stuff. But really good story, awesome production value at the end for like I can't even, we probably don't even know what the budget of this movie is. We can't even find like copies of it. So wonderful movie made on probably a very small budget.
All right. That brings it to me on quality. I think it's fairly obvious. I'm a little bit lower on this than everybody else. We called Chad the one who liked it the least.
I mean, originally when he first watched it, of the people I got to watch it.
No, I know. But it turns out it's me, and I still love this movie, so I really love it. I will say that there's certain things like how much it enrages me at times and how stressful it makes me, which is good. It's a good thing, but sometimes that makes me not enjoy it quite as much. Also, I wish Ashley Jensen was in it more, who plays Jennifer. We get like most of the scenes we get her reacting to things like watching the video and stuff like that, and not really getting to do much. And she's in other things that I really like. She's in Extras with Ricky Gervais's movie, which is very, very good movie, and I recommend. I think she's in that. Is she in that, or is she in another Ricky Gervais? It doesn't matter. She's very good. I think it's Extras. Yeah.
Extras so maybe
she's not in Extras.
I don't know, but Extras is a show, not a movie. So
right, yeah,
that might be. Never mind. Continue. Let's just.
She is in Extras. I just looked it up.
Okay.
She's in Extras. It's very good. That series. I just wish she was in it a little bit more. Regardless of that, I still gave it a 7, which is the same score I gave Christmas Vacation, which brings the overall quality average to 8.02, which brings the average of all of our scores for this movie to 7.935, which is higher than the 7.55 for Christmas Vacation, which means that Nativity wins the camp trophy, the 2024 holiday camp trophy. Woo. Oh, hey, Dylan. So yeah, gang, we did it, and that means that all of you out there, and my whole panel, you've earned your badge. You've earned the holiday 2024 merit badge.
Yeah. Do ship to Japan.
But yeah, so
does it come in tattoo? No, I'm kidding.
It can.
Oh my gosh, imagine.
That's a you choice. Dylan.
If I just got a sleeve of badges for matches. That's like some cult shit.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who get tattoos of YouTubers. They are from inspired by YouTubers they like. So that I would never expect from anybody.
I've got an MLM right on my arse, so yeah.
Oh, nice. Speaking of MLM, look at that. Let's hear where everybody can find you, Dylan.
Me? Oh, yeah. You said speaking of MLM. I'm like, that's you, buddy. No, you can find me here doing Cinema Soapbox with Matthew, with Chad, occasionally with some other guests. And you can also find me on last month's sports camp, film camp. Did I get that right? Yeah. Film camp. Words. Very tired. But yeah, you can also find me on my channel, the Dill Pickle Movie Network, where Matt also co-hosts a show, Frame Wreck, with me. Chad co-hosts a show, Picture This, with me, which Stacy will be on in the near future. I don't want to necessarily say next month or not. It is next month. Yeah, that episode will come out later. But spoiler alert, so you get a little sneak preview. Won't tell you what year yet, though. But we are doing 1945 this month for Christmas because of the Bells of St. Mary. And a lot of other great movies that time of year, or that year for this time of year, even though they're not necessarily Christmas movies. Also wanted to say I knew there was potential it could have been our deep dive, so I saved a little fun fact. But I believe Tootie, I'm not going to go too far on this, but I believe Margaret O'Brien still remains the youngest Oscar winner, I think, for it. She won the Oscar, not a competitive Oscar. She won a special youth Oscar. She may not be the youngest, but she was only 7 years old, and she won an Oscar for that role. So I just wanted to shout her out. I was going to do it when we got to the performances for the deep dive, but y'all don't have taste. I'm kidding. I love this panel. I love the movies we picked. I love the conversation because it was 5 very different movies as well, and from different eras. Yeah. Like there were no 2 movies that kind of came out around the same time, except for like Nativity and Black Christmas, which could not be more different. So I think we did a really good job, and I thank you especially. I thank you especially, Matt, because the holidays is all about bringing together people at tough times, and you brought together a great panel at tough times when we're planning flights and planning presents and getting cold and drones flying over our states, some of us. So thank you for doing this and for giving me this outlet to
Yes.
share my love of a movie that is a third Christmas.
Nice. I think it's Christmas. Anyway, I
Stacy and I can duke it out on Cinema Soapbox if you'd like. But.
Just to point out, I'm going to start doing this more in the future, and I meant to do it this time. Once we're going to the deep dives, I should have said, is there any extra things you guys want to talk about real quick of the other ones before we move on?
In that case, you guys have 20 minutes? I'm kidding.
No. Yes, and that. Well, thank you. Now I'm gonna rephrase that. But yeah, it's. I had, because I also had prepped things to talk about for Black Christmas. Because I thought maybe they'll love it. Yes, thank you, Dylan, for that. Chad, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, first I'll say this. Thanks for having me on. This was a great, fun slate to go over. I love this idea of the show. It's my first time on this show on the channel, and I just think it's such a cool idea. Like, the way you framed everything is so cool, and with the announcement speaker and everything is just such a fun thing. I feel like you do have to talk about Friday the 13th on here at some point. But that said, you can find me in other areas of the channel. You can find me other areas of the Dill Pickle Movie Network, as been stated, especially Picture This, which I love dearly. And then also check out my channel, Cinema Chad, where we rank stuff, a lot of different things. On You Ranking With Me is the show that I do. And then also, actually, I'll name drop it. Also, friend of this channel, Chris Baker Scott, was on our Friday the 13th episode of You Ranking With Me over on Cinema Chad. So if you liked him on here, check him out over there as well, because he was a great guest and it was a great fun time ranking those movies. And then also check out Welcome to Primetime as a horror channel that I have with my buddy Hunter Chambliss and my wife Carrie Webb, and we just talk about horror, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a lot of different fun stuff over there, and I think that's about it, actually.
Right on. Yeah, that Friday the 13th rank was very good, even if you guys were wrong. But
everybody has a right to be wrong.
Yeah,
I love that phrase. I love that.
Everybody's right to be wrong. That's true. All right, Stacy, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me in last month's Frame Rec over at the Dill Pickle Movie Network, and then eventually on this month's Frame Rec. And then next month, I should be back on this channel. I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal that.
It's not going to be next month. You're just filming it next month.
Oh, okay. Well, then scratch that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm filming stuff next month. I have no idea when it's going to air, but eventually I'll be back here on Cinema Soapbox, maybe some other stuff in between. I don't know. And on Picture This, also over at the Dill Pickle Movie Network.
Right on. Corey, let's hear it.
I got a MCU trivia match with Dylan coming up. Should be airing soon. Came out of hibernation for that. You could catch me here. You could catch me there. Catch me on the streets of Japan. I don't know. That's really about it. I'll show up from time to time, though. Pop in, pop out.
Don't go looking for Corey. He'll find you.
Ain't that the truth?
Special set of skills.
Yes, watch the Dylan. When is the MCU match?
When are you airing this? Because it may have already come out. Thursday the 19th?
Yes. Then
it is coming up in 4 days on the 23rd, right before Christmas.
Nice. But yes, so we did it. Thank you guys. You can find me here at Matty Loves Movies. You can find me on the Dill Pickle Movie Network on Frame Rec, as mentioned, and then whatever other shows that he allows me to be on. You can find me in your hearts if you look deep enough. And I'd like to thank Michelle Wren for the artwork that she made. And let's talk about what's happening next month. Because next month we are starting the thing I teased when we first started this channel, which is the first episode of the Corman series that we're going to do for the Corman badge. And the first badge you can earn in the Corman series is going to be Corman is a Genre, which are his genre movies. My guess is going to be Chris Baker Scott on that, which Chad mentioned earlier. And the movies for you to watch are War of the Satellites, Teenage Caveman, The Terror, X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes, Gas with 4 S's, Frankenstein Unbound, and A Bucket of Blood. You can watch A Bucket of Blood and Teenage Caveman episodes of Frame Wreck. One is a Frame Wreck, one's a Frame Wreck Redemption. Over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network, because those were movies we very much enjoyed, especially Bucket of Blood. So go check that out. And once again, for Matty Loves Movies and all of my panel, I hope you have a happy holiday from Camp Film Camp.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bye.